Happy Sunday, SMITE fans. You are watching the SPL Week 1, day number 3. All this made possible in part due to our friends over at Alienware. Big thanks to them for being our title sponsor here in Season 8. Alienware. Go to alienwarearena.com for giveaways more. Join their global community at Alienware on Instagram and Twitter. So shout outs to Alienware for sponsoring the Season 8 of the SPL. Without further ado, Agro joins me to discuss all things SPL, and we'll get into our first matchup here short enough, but already fireworks aggro here in week number 1.
It's been so much fun to watch, man. I mean, sure, the SCC, it's good to get your blood boiling and get ready for the SPL, but man, there's nothing that hits quite like a great SPL matchup. It's been so much fun to watch these great teams. Yeah. The Kings have looked so good. They looked great up against the Titans, but still some question marks remain. It's only one set. How much was that? The Titans looking a little bit slow to start, I would say. And can the Kings repeat that type of performance up against the Jade Dragons team who looked awfully dominant yesterday up against the Oni Warriors?
Ovrin on the SMITE Pro Twitter account this morning had a summoning circle of candles praying for a 2-1 set here today because everything up to this point has been 2-0s. The surprise of them all, probably how good, you said there, Agro, how good the Camelot Kings looked in their first matchup against the Tartarus Titans, and then skip down to what we have today. Jade Dragons Camelot Kings start us off. Silver Scarabs versus the much-anticipated team, Valhalla Valkyries. Who knows how that team is going to look either. Not much to look at here in the standings. Bolts 1-1, the only team that has played 2 games here so far. A couple more teams will reach that mark after our matchup here today. But the big surprise, I think, Agro, especially as we transition our conversation, is that team that you see they are tied for first, Camelot Kings 1-0. Maybe no surprise that they won, but it's how handily they won. We're going to get to see them get tested here in our first set of the day.
I think that the Kings had a lot of things that did not look to me like it was a one-off type of performance. You know, it's not like all of a sudden Captain Twig was just hitting everything, or Netrioid got ahead in lane and started soloing people. It was the way they played the map. It was the way that they spaced out their objectives, the way that they worked together well as a unit. Those sorts of things are more replicable than individual mechanical performances. So I'm excited about what the Kings are going to be able to bring here in phase number 1. Now, that being said, they've got a big test ahead of them. The Dragons are not going to be a team that is as slow to get up to defend those objectives as the Titans were in that first set. But I think the Kings have a lot going for them. They clearly have all bought in to whoever is doing their macro shot calling, and that's what's most important in my mind, because this is a team full of players that did not play together last year, have not played a whole lot together in general. Of course, Variety and Captain Twig have a lot of synergy from the past, but the rest of the team kind of all new, sticking together now. It's been fun to watch already in just a few short games that we've seen them.
And you're hoping, Agro, if you talk about pick-ban strategy, whoever's pick banning for the Kings has a J key on their keyboard so they can type in Giannis and get that one off the table. We'll get to that discussion about the Jade Dragons here in a little bit. But if you do want to discuss individual players, how nice has it been, though, in all honesty, at least in the couple of games that we saw, for Captain Twig? You know, it almost feels like a homecoming, didn't it, back into the jungle and the dominant performance that he put out. It just kind of felt right. So continuing that and continuing that pace of play is going to be pivotal for this team, but for his confidence as well, and for fans of this Kings roster. So I'm happy with the way that Twig has looked in the first couple of games that they've played.
How could you be anything but ecstatic about it if you're a Kings fan? I mean, Twig, Mike tweeted it after the game, actually, for the Kings, that people just forget that Twig just wins. The guy's just a winner. On every team he's really been on, he has rarely seen struggles during the regular season. During his very, very storied SPL career, he's the only player to have been to every single World Championship. So you know that he's going to be bringing the heat come regular season time, and he wasted no time getting off the blocks, so nice and steady. Of course, we're going to be looking at God Pool. You know, how many different gods is he going to play? He pulled out the Naja, looked fantastic on that during their set. I believe it was the Athena as the other pick. You know Twig is going to be willing to play a whole lot of different styles. I'm excited to see what he's going to bring here today. I know that the Dragons know his style well. They played with him the last 2 years, once in the jungle, once in the mid lane.
Good point.
So I think that their understanding of how he's going to play the map is going to be fun to watch.
That's actually such an interesting point there, Agro, and actually I think an important topic to touch on because, of course, the Dragons have kind of this one guy on the other side that they're familiar with. They know his tendencies out of the jungle. How much of a role does that realistically play with how much has changed going into Season 8 for Captain Twig, especially bringing information back to this Kings team. Do you think the Kings team is better off, has more of an edge going into a matchup against the Dragons team with somebody kind of an insider of info like Twig, or is enough change that matters a little bit less?
Plenty has certainly changed. I don't think it's a huge deal, but if we're talking a hypothetical of Twig's exact skill set that hasn't played with the Jade Dragons before versus Twig's exact skill set that has played with the Dragons before, the one that has played with the Dragons is going to bring a little bit more insight to picks and bans, what the team is likely to have been practicing. What are some of the things that they were playing towards the end of last year that he thinks might have gotten better coming into this year. That certainly factors into it, but it's no secret what the Jade Dragons are going to try and do. Mike is going to run around the map with Sam. They're going to be on time for your buffs, and they're going to try and beat you up and engage on you on your side of the map. Doesn't take a former teammate to tell you that.
Yeah, Mike, the current league assist leader, by the way, 0-1-27 is poor Mike's KDA at the moment. Big surprise, Aggro, honestly, I think is the duo lane for this Kings team as well. I think it would have been totally acceptable if Genetics and Netrioid took a little bit of time to get off the ground and get the ball rolling. But it kind of seemed like anything but. Obviously, a lot of the pressure happening around the mid lane. Big man Tings looked great for this Kings roster. I think a lot of fans were pretty pleasantly surprised, though, with the immediate synergy and skill set that Genetics and Netrioid had brought to this Kings roster so early on.
Certainly two talented players. Does not surprise me too much that they've looked pretty good so far. Again, very small sample size. This is going to be their best test probably all through Phase 1. I mean, Polar Bear Mike and Panda Cat have been the most storied duo lane in the SPL for years at this point. When you're talking about the most historically successful duo lanes, everyone's going to tell you Bear and Jeff come to mind first, Emilito and Raffer. In my mind, I think Panda Cat and PBM are the best duo lane of all time. They have just dominated for so long at this point that it's tough to go up against them. And when Panda Cat's getting things like the On Her, that was the pick that he was consistently going towards last time around in their game yesterday up against the Oni Warriors. That's a lane-dominant pick, so we're going to see what Netrioid's going to be ready for, assuming that Panda Cat could go back to that On Her again.
Well, it's so important to put so much emphasis on this Kings team because that's been the surprise, but a pleasant surprise nonetheless. As we head into picks and bans for game number 1, we can discuss this Dragons roster a little bit, but to your point there, Aggro, it's not all that much of a surprise. You know what this Dragons team likes to do, and you know they're going to be good at doing it. Then the big conversation piece has to become with the Jade Dragons in that first pick slot. Where does this Giannis fall? We thought it was slightly criminal that Hurriwind got Giannis in back-to-back games yesterday. Is that a must-ban, especially given the level of high priority and very good gods in SMITE at the moment? If you're banning Giannis, you're letting something else through, especially when the Dragons are in this first pick spot. They have the ability to let some other picks through. They can leave more on the table for themselves. It's an interesting game of chess that we already have the answer to, but now the Kings have to realize they've left something else open, and the Dragons can kind of dictate what that is.
The way that the first set for the Dragons went was literally best case scenario for them because you get Hurricane on a pick and Giannis that makes you look unbeatable if you have that pick, and like you said, it warps the picks and bans up against you for the foreseeable future. I think that performance was so dominant that it might be multiple sets before he gets to see that Giannis once again. So now you're looking at things like Set, like Tsukiyomi that are much more likely to get through. Yamoja has been perma-banned against Mike for basically all of last year. Maybe that's what they're going to look to leave open. If I had to guess, I'd expect... Okay, so it's a King Arthur ban. Interesting. Everyone kind of talking about that Giannis for Hurricane. The Arthur for Fine OK was awfully dominant as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that be banned away early. On Her is interesting from the Jade Dragon. Tsukiyomi open, Set open, Guan open. You've got a lot available here on the table. This tells me that the Jade Dragons don't feel like any of those gods are head and shoulders above their counterparts, and so that they could play a little bit more patiently and wait and just get Panda Cat that lane-dominant pick in this On Her, and then wait and try and get a really strong 2 picks right now, right after that, or right before that second ban phase. Normally, I'm not a big fan of waiting and seeing in that first pick slot, but I think On Her is good enough that it doesn't bother me.
Kukulkan, Khan, that was a very popular, maybe even the favorite pick for the Kings in their first matchup. BMT consistently hitting those Spirits of the 9 wins with that consistent setup from the rest of his team. So Giannis on one side, the Kukulkan on the other side, two mid lane picks I think that we're going to be discussing as this set goes on. Looking back, though, to Season 7 Worlds, the first game where Hurrywind, or the first set, rather, where Hurrywind and the rest of E United fell out. He played E-Set once, Giannis twice, and then Giannis twice to start off the year here. So Hurrywind has not played another god other than Giannis since the first game of Season 7 Worlds with him and E United. So that pivot is going to be important to look at here. But I agree with your statement and your kind of take on this King Arthur pick. Fine, okay, decimated that game as well, and it just also happened to be a ridiculous game for Hurrywind. I think the Kulkullen is kind of a good pivot, though. Aggro, fine, okay, has the ability to play that well on another pick that has the tendency to do similar things.
Very similar things. It's going to be lane pressure, it's going to be rotation power, and really good blue buff pressure on the enemy side. As Erlong Shen comes through, this is a god that I think fits Twig's playstyle perfectly. He can play the setup, he can play the carry, you can be very, very flexible, and that's how I would describe Twig's playstyle in general. So I like this pick quite a bit. A little bit risky up against Scylla. I do think Scylla can, once she gets ahead, really dominate Erlong Shen, because not only will your Sikkim stop the 72 transformations from running away, but it also stops if he blinks at you and you can react with that one. You stop a big part of his burst damage and set him up for a pretty easy kill. But I'm a little surprised to see Mike's pick go a little bit later with the way that the picks and bans have gone. Now, yesterday they bottom two'd his pick both games, but with the way that, you know, Ymir ban, Athena ban, and taking away that Giannis, I thought they might let Hurry try and get more of a counter pick option and then pick Mike Scott a little bit earlier to guarantee some of that pressure. But it seems like the Jade Dragons want to keep with this same style. Yesterday, I think in both games, they might have bottom two'd Sam and Mike in both of those opportunities. At least in game one, they bottom two'd those gods. So it seems like that's been the strategy so far for Jade Dragons. Get their backline set and get Fine OK set, and then let Mike and Sam get their counter picks later on in the draft.
Jade Dragon's privy to some of the strategy of the Kings as well. You're going to ban Athena, I think, anyway, but Athena and Naja specifically were the two picks that Captain Twig looked great on yesterday, pairing those with that Spirit of the Nine Winds out of the mid lane from the Kukulkan with BMT. Erlong Shen, good pivot, though. I think you've touched on that pick a decent amount there, Aggro. Pretty spot on. Chernobog has been a very popular answer in that Hunter department. And Ares over now for what we're assuming will be PBM, unless there's some absurd switch up happening here. The Ares and on her lane, is that one that gets you excited?
Certainly a lot of kill pressure, not a ton of kill potential early because their wave clear just isn't good enough, but as soon as you get into that mid game, you start to get a ton of kill potential. Love the Ares up against the Erlong Shen, one of the classic counter matchups. The cripple's great against him, and he doesn't have CC immunity built into the kit. Kukulkan also no CC immunity built into the kit. It's going to say Genetics is going to go for something with CC immunity, no doubt in my mind, because you don't want to give Mike that many priority targets to hit with that ultimate. Xing Chen looked good for Mike yesterday. Really better against auto attack centric gods, and the Jade Dragons don't have a ton of those. Also not great against Thor's backline dive because he's knock-up immune during the 3. So that's your primary form of interrupt. The ultimate is so easy to pre-bead, so you don't have to worry about that too much on the dive. I think I'm a little bit worried about the Xing Chen being able to peel on the counter engage effectively. But as far as a primary engage tool, it can be good. But you're looking at multiple characters on the other side with knock-up immunity, not just the Thor, but the Ares as well. So that makes Genetics' job significantly harder in my mind in finding these initiations.
Beads seem to be the name of the game for the Camelot Kings, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Going into game number 1. Third game and third new god for Sanford Soccer as well, continuing to add variety into that god pool. This Thor pick, Aggro, brings a lot of weight with it going into game number 1. You compare that with the Erlong Shen out of the jungle. How much pressure do you think Twig, presumably on the Erlong Shen, is going to feel trying to keep up with that semi-global pressure from this Thor?
I think that he'll be okay. Erlong Shen is going to be one of those gods that oftentimes wants to be the first one in on that gank, so you have to be really more worried about the counter engages from Sam's Thor in my mind. I think that the Jade Dragons composition in general is going to be a little bit slower paced than what we normally see from them. I'm looking at the side lanes as where they're going to have pressure. And when you're a jungler and you know your side lanes are likely to get out pressured, but you could have pressure in mid, you should have clear potential in mid for sure with Kukulkan up against Scylla. It's going to be up to how Twig and BMT want to play the map. Where do they go with that pressure, because when you're in mid and you've got the pressure but both your side lanes are losing, you really got to coordinate with your jungler to make sure that you're taking the right paths, that you're not getting cut off on your rotation to farm, and that you're staying grouped and ready to fight in case, because you know that if you path aggressively into the jungle, you meet up with someone like Thor or the Ares, that you're likely losing that rotation battle because it's going to be in their jungle and they're rotating in with that lane pressure. So making smart rotations is going to be the key here for Twig and for big man Tings, because otherwise I don't really see how they're getting a whole lot of lane pressure post level 6, 7 in either of their side lanes.
Big man Tings especially there, because the Scylla has a bit of the escape ability, able to teleport onto the Sentinels. Kukulkan, you can speed yourself up, but you get caught out, you have a harder time getting out. I think Variety and FineOK obviously are going to have a very important matchup here in this game. The Sun Wukong 100% win rate on the line here against the Kulkullen. You imagine we see any fireworks early on in the game here, Aggro, between two gods that carry some kill pressure going into lane.
Yeah, as I'm thinking about the way that I would want to play out this game if I'm the Kings, you know, I'm talking about lane pressure being really important on both side lanes here for the Dragons, but Wukong is an excellent clear god. He can also fight pretty well. And Erlong is really good at ganking pre-level 5. If I'm on the Dragons, I'm telling FineOK that he's got to be careful of a level 2 or 3 gank, one of those cheesy ganks from the jungler that normally you don't see. If that starts to happen and Fine falls behind, Wukong pushes leads really well. And now instead of both of your side lanes potentially losing pressure, now you've got pressure in mid and in right, and you can start to invade blue buffs consistently, get on those back camps. Erlong very good at sealing those away. So I think the easiest route to victory here for the Camelot Kings is setting FineOK behind and putting pressure on the enemy blue buff. So watch out for those level 2, 3 ganks. I think that could be a potential here for the Kings.
I think gone are the days of Sun Wukong is good at running away, and that's it, especially with Bluestone now and how well the Bluestone synergizes with Sun Wukong's kit in the early game, and then when you get the Brooch online later in the game. Sun Wukong does damage, and then he runs away as you try to kill him. He's a bit of a journeyman now. This matchup early on in the weekend, certainly not one we would have looked over, but now it's maybe the most anticipated matchup of the weekend. Jade Dragons, Camelot Kings, Game 1. Let's start it off.
Thank you, Dalton and Aggro. Finch and Mifflin here as we move into what has become, or we hope will become, a critical matchup. The Camelot Kings with a big upset earlier in the week, and now the Jade Dragons, everyone's sort of perennial first seed team, gonna really give these guys a test. Miff, in the draft though, didn't say what Jade Dragons had some good work done to try and limit what we know Twig likes to do. The setup for Cuckoo is obviously still there. Erlong can do that great, but they did target him.
They did. I really like it. But if we're going to talk about the draft for Jade Dragons, I'm just going to talk about how much I like their actual draft, Finch. I mean, FineOK on Kukulkan should be able to handle his lane pretty handily, not really struggling too much up against Variety. So I'm expecting a wash over there. It's going to come down to which one of these soul laners is able to rotate out first. But when you have Sam for Soccer on a god like Thor, having that global presence, similar to what we saw in the Thanatos, I think we're going to see him over towards that soul lane, creating the space for FineOK to rotate over and deal with that threat that you already addressed. The Kukulkan, big man Tings, has a target on his back.
But Sam starts at red this time around and comes back over to the back. Harpy's Myth, as our resident jungle expert, tell me how you're feeling about this start. I mean, we see it sometimes where soul laners start over to blue, and it usually can get them the lane a little bit faster. But Sam's going to be keeping his head down and just farming. There's a ton of jungle still up for him.
I think that really is a start that helps out your duo lane more than anything. It allows your on-her and your Ares to rotate in lane much more quickly, so you can get this exact scenario. PBM going in, BMT already low.
Yeah, you're right. Now they can look for the red buff invade. Doesn't look like they quite got that, but they are putting pressure onto Tings and Twig. Tings, though, wants to keep up the fight, finds a little bit of poke, but you're seeing exactly what the Jade Dragons are capable of. An adjustment in the starts leads to, as you said, duo pressure, and hey, look for a red buff invade on the back of it.
And Tings has to trade out his beads as well. So Kukulkan, no beads, a minute and 30 seconds in the game, cannot be feeling too safe, especially considering how early PBM was willing to rotate into the center of the map and now immediately heads back over to duo lane because he realized Sam's rotating towards the center. This is intelligent farm splitting, man. Jade Dragons, their macro play on a map that's only been in the game for, what, 3-4 days now is so impressive.
Yeah, they've got a read on it already here, don't they? And the thing is about Cuckoo Beads being down, at least Sam doesn't have a whole lot of good CC. Oh, he's got the wall. That's actually a pretty good CC. So yeah, it's trouble for him there if he gets caught out and something like a crush is waiting for him on the backside. So I'd be more surprised if Jade Dragons don't look to capitalize than if they do. And this is what I think we expect from the Dragons, right? Is to kind of be the ones that are out here testing, seeing what kind of new stuff might come up for them down the line. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the same thing from like the Warriors, the Titans down the line. But right now, it looks like Jade Dragons are coming in very much ready.
Look at the difference between these junglers' builds as well. Even though Captain Twig is playing maybe a slightly earlier game slanted god, the second he ticks over to level 4, Erling Shen has a phenomenal power spike. But because he goes for the Eye of the Jungle start, he has to delay his back slightly and has to wait for those boots a little bit longer. Whereas Sam for Soccer, having cleared out the entire jungle, D6 the jungle as well, so he should be there for every single buff, not having to worry about splitting it. He backs a little bit earlier, he hits level 4 a little bit earlier, and it opens him up to get involved a little bit earlier. Keep your eyes on this Thor. I think the second he hits over level 5, see him in the duo lane, see him in mid, but you're going to see him somewhere, and he's going to be getting aggressive.
Wow, it's all coming up for him exactly the way that he would like, in the order that he cleared it previously. Speed just now spotting that's where he's going. And I wonder if he'll be close enough to 5 on the back of that. Should be pretty close if he doesn't take over outright. Well, that suddenly puts, the fear into this map here if you are the Kings. Variety, maybe not the best target. Sam does indeed hit 5. They're off that speed, but still not level 5. Finally hits it, so maybe not the one you want. It's got to be coming back towards mid and maybe finding Tings, as Herwin will kind of contest these Harpies on his own. Throws the crush in, can't find them, but it's kind of left the rest of the map just to trust themselves. It is Variety after all. I thought with the ult up there's no way, but now out of range, and this first big spike ends up not being all that much value.
Tough situation for Sam there. I'm not even sure that Variety spots him out. I think he's just backing up. He wants to go back to base there anyway. It's just an unfortunate circumstance for the Thor player here. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. Cannot fault him for trying to shut down the Sun Wukong before he gets that first back off. With only Boots 1 available to him, should have been pretty easy to find that kill had the dunk connected.
Unfortunately, was not there for him. So Sam, I wonder if the information's even out there for the Kings. It's kind of like you said, I don't know if Variety even saw him. Are they even going to be playing as though Sam for Soccer doesn't have that ult? I doubt it. So maybe that kind of mitigates some of the loss, but obviously removes the opportunity for Sam to get his team first blood and off to a good start and potentially put a little bit of pressure onto that middle map, set things behind, and get Herwind off to a good start here at the start of this game. Because I think that's going to be a pretty big indicator of how this game goes, Myth, is which one of these mid laners is fighting more value. They are both big-time follow-up mages right now with control over these objectives. Whichever one of those is having more success, indicated by which one of their teams setting them up the better, is going to show how the game's going.
And speaking of these mid laners, we're already seeing how these two teams are deciding to play around them very differently. Big Man Tings has been splitting a lot of farm with Twig, but they have been controlling the neutrals, the mid camps, a lot better, whereas Hurrywin has been, in large part, left alone to just farm on his own. Maybe be able to steal away a mid camp, maybe not. Sam for Soccer, unconcerned with how those neutral camps are going.
Yeah, he even drops the red without having Hurrywin nearby. Herwin comes back and grabs it anyway. Obviously not going to miss out on the buff itself. But I think this just goes to show that what this setup plan for how Sam is farming this backside of the jungle, that seems inflexible, doesn't it? He's just going to go back there and grab it every time. As the Greater Scorpion Forp goes down, Fine OK does show up, but not in time to contest. We'll get a little bit of free bullying in on Variety, though. Sure, he'll happily take it. As Fine OK has the early beads selected, a lot of the Dragons do, except for Mike, who basically needs Blink on this Ares, respecting the CC coming out from the Kings.
Yeah, I really do like the beads pickup. You have to be concerned about it. I mean, anytime Ares is in the game, you're kind of dictating that there's going to be at least 4 beads coming through there. Variety electing not to go for beads does make sense because he has CC immunity on the ultimate, as well as he's really not the target. Mike, in a little bit of trouble here. Twig looks like for a second he was willing to engage, but thinks better of it once he sees Hurrywin coming in on the ward.
Wow, Big Man Tings just drops an ult raw to look for a hit. It's not there. Well dodged by everyone on the Dragons. Mike forced to use the blink to disengage, it seemed. I thought he had a chance to at least go for an ult there, try and pull some relics, but he was patient in that engagement, unlike the Kings, who just kind of went for it with that cuckoo ult.
Yeah, he blinks out of the 9 turns blessing from Captain Twig. Which is crazy, by the way. That is not easy to do. That soundbite is played right before it comes on out. That must have been a read there. Twig feeling a little bit disappointed with how that one goes, but doesn't trade out any relics. Perhaps maybe even a good trade for the Kings there, considering now BBM's going to be a lot more choosy with his engagements. Can't really just walk in the majority of the time unless you find genetics isolated.
Seems like he's being choosy about it anyway. Does bully genetics a bit, so Metroid knows that Mike is on this side of the map. Puts the pillar up. That does sort of interrupt where the dash goes, but kind of inconsequentially, I suppose, in the end. Just dashes right back out anyway, but interesting to think about that Panda Cap was able to pull it off. But Mike comes over, splits the wave, and things come back to normal in this one. We said we want Sam to kind of be this pace setter. He's got this ultimate back up. Aside from the gank attempt we saw from Variety over there, a little bit keeping his head down and farming, and it has resulted in a lead for him. You like Sam's approach here so far?
I think it's a little bit of a selfish approach. I mean, as you already pointed out, he's clearing out red buff with or without Hurrywin, all right? He's going on it on timer, and now, yeah, we want this Sun Wukong.
Yeah, and Variety seems to know. Bird form has come out. He is on the escape. And again, it's the ult over there from blue buff. If Variety's pushed up, we'll take it. If not, Sam just kind of comes back into the jungle. I'm a little surprised by how insistent he's been on this solo lane gank so far.
I think it might be a byproduct of just his jungle path. He's been walking a loop this entire time. My man has not walked into a lane yet this game.
No, he has been insistent on his jungle farm. A little bit of action in mid and in duo, and it has Panda Cat on the run. Doesn't quite get beat out, but Netroid takes advantage of the power spike, returns to base, uses the ult to come back in, and when he has beat Boots and the other doesn't, got aggressive, but Mike in trouble in mid. Variety has rotated in, that forced out the somersault cloud, and Mike sure was low, but he manages to escape. It's Variety getting involved in this game very early on, pre-10 minutes, and rotating well ahead of Fine OK, who's now showed up, and has caught Twig out in the jungle. 9 turns blessing, comes out defensively. Sam teleports into the hammer. Kupo connects though, and that knocks up 2. So now that changes the complexion of the fight. On the run are the Dragons, but Hurrywin finds Variety elsewhere, and they turn it around onto Twig to find 2.
The Kings stick around in that fight just a little bit too long. After we see the Jade Dragons start their own disengage, they walk around the side of those back camps. The Kings can no longer stick inside of it. BMT, although having a phenomenal ult there, wasn't able to close gap the same way Hurrywin was. Immediately puts Variety down. Then Twig, no ultimate available means no life available either. The Jade Dragons taking a fight deep in enemy territory, getting themselves a pretty nice lead. 2,000 gold, 9 minutes in.
Yeah, none of these fights have started the way that I would have drawn them up on paper yet, right? I mean, how do you have Thor Dunk and Ares ult, and that's yet to start a single engagement for you, and yet here they are up 2-0, and with pretty good control of at least their own side of the jungle, but even with a chance, I think, to move up on that right side and look for some invades too. Just great work from Hurrywin to find that very first kill into Variety and followed up by the squad. This is what makes the Dragons so scary to me, Miff, is I think that they're just fine whether things go according to plan or not.
Yeah, they just play by the cuff, right? And whatever they need to do is what they're going to do. Now we're getting a little bit of a look back here at Hurrywin able to find that kill clean. Almost completely on his own, actually. Nobody was there to help him. Twig left high and dry as well. Falls down easily to Sam for Soccer. And that is a turnaround play, again, to reiterate, off of a double ultimate from Big Man Tings. Had Sam for Soccer itemized any differently, I think the Kings come out of that fight completely ahead. But Thor already had a full on Chile available to him. Barely did any damage.
Yeah, and I kind of can't believe it since Variety's been his only target, but I think we can all agree that that ship might have sailed by now. Level 11, working on this Soul Eater. Not tremendously tanky, but I seem mistaken. Sam is on his way to right. Yet again, Variety is the man. And still Sam had the itemization to deal with Tings, were that the problem. But a good blink from Variety gets him out, but they force that blink all the same. Should be pretty close to 12, though, so I expect Variety to have a second relic before too long.
Man, taking a peek at the Kings' builds here, both of their frontliners, Variety and Twig, have gone for very squishy builds. Jade Dragons start the Pyromancer, spot the rotation, and think better of it. It's Fine OK looking for a bit of a zone, and he has been bullying Variety. He's got sustain. Man's not tanky, though.
Yeah, and Mike is on the way here, too, so they might have a chance to actually lock this down. No blink for Mike makes it difficult.
Shot.
Does connect the chains, 2 of them, but they will not keep it up because Somersault Cloud comes out. Exactly what they wanted. Variety cancels it right away. He's just going to go take his back. Well, the right side of the jungle has belonged to the Dragons without much contest.
Yeah, I mean, it should, with how often Sam for Soccer's been over there, right? He has been
He's
making
over there
sure
a lot.
Variety cannot feel safe at all. Variety has not tanked the Thor ult yet, but he is feeling that mental pressure, knowing,
Yep.
look, Sam for Soccer, for some reason, has got beef with me, and it's been working out. They've been controlling this side of the map, been controlling the pace around Pyromancer, and with the lead they've already established, have been forcing the Camelot Kings to respond in numbers. The more time the Chaos teams keep four people hovering the right side just because of the threat of Pyromancer, is more time that the Dragons are just going to pull ahead elsewhere on the map.
Dragon's unique take on the early game that is full of these types of choices yet again.
What is
Sam over
this?
here in right. Variety literally cannot believe it. I don't understand. Why do you not like me, bro? As he goes down, Fido-K gets the kill, and Sam for Soccer continuing to look for influence on the right side of the map. Did we miss something? Did Variety come at this man at some point?
Yeah, I think maybe I check the Twitter next time we get a moment here just to
Yeah.
see if Variety's been talking smack, because this is legitimate targeting. If this were a Nintendo game, Finch, Sam for Soccer would get banned for bullying the amount of
Yeah.
effort he's putting into trying to shut down Variety, but now all that effort is going to be sown into fruition. Pyromancer started up, Genetics and Ting's the only ones around.
But it looks like Jade Dragons drop it again. That ultimate from Netroid perhaps dissuading them from going into a fight that their ADC can't take part in. So they drop off, give up the objective for now, but I don't think the Dragons are too disappointed by that. They seem to be perfectly fine with using those as a way to force fights out of the Kings. Hasn't quite materialized yet. Instead, they've been patient on that left side, but just Genetics here at Gold Fury thought there might be a play, but he doesn't have a ton of company, so they leave that alone for now. If you're the Kings, though, what is your response to all this pressure on Riot? As PandaCat has a chance for a solo kill. There is no ultimate from Netroid, but there are no solo kills. Mike will come in. This is clean as you like. And PandaCat and Mike form the duo lane to get the kill.
Every single fight that the Jade Dragons have won, they've been jumping, man. They're just outnumbering their opposition. The Camelot Kings are not able to match the rotations, and now every single time the Dragons find a pick, they immediately regroup and try and do something on the map. Try and find a POA, force a fight. Gold Fury started up, and Genetics loses his life for it.
Yeah, and they could just stay on it. Looks like the call from the Kings, and Final-K can relay this, is just to trade Pyro for Fury. So not only can Final-K tell it, he can even contest and potentially get the kill onto Twig. So the Fury goes to the Pyromancer goes to the Kings, but yes, Twig ends up falling. They reset the Fury to avoid the big man Ting steal, and now they'll take it, and that goes about as well as you could possibly want if you're a Jade Dragons fan. I think their Final-K tries the steal, doesn't get it, but he'll settle for dumping down the enemy jungler.
Yeah, as well as getting a Gold Fury on the other side of the map, even forcing out Big Man Ting's ultimate on an attempted Jerb-style steal. Doesn't work out this time for him, and now 6-0 is the slash line, 14.5 minutes into this game, and we're looking at nearly a 4,000 gold lead as well. The Jade Dragons have a stranglehold on this map, and at times it feels like it's not even just because they're able to find these picks, find these kills. It's just pressure. It's just perceived pressure from the Kings that have been giving the Dragons enough space to do whatever they need to.
This was Fine-OK doing his work on Pyro while his team secured
Close.
the Gold Fury. Wow, Fine actually went for the all-star play, by the way, the kill and the steal at the exact same time. Just to let you know what that guy is always thinking about at every moment of this game, what would be the most back-breaking play he could do. Didn't quite pan out there, but I'm sure he's happy with the kill onto Twig.
Yeah, I mean, Fine-OK might be one of the players that is closest to a literal task spot as Twig getting isolated in the jungle. Fantastic pillar. Desert Fury a little bit off the mark. One shot, finds it. PandaCat's nuts.
Yeah, PandaCat just jumps in and says, I'm killing him, and you guys can't keep fighting because Sam is up in the air, dunks down,
Huge
and avoids
juke.
the Cuckoo ult. How does that end up hitting no one on the tail end? It's because Ghosts are ready for everything. Now the pull, they don't even need it. Genetics removed just from the damage from PandaCat. And yeah, pretty much not a world where Variety can legitimately walk into this fight. I think he will turn around. Myth, this has just been, as you said, at times perceived pressure. It's turned into Camelot Kings can't fight them anywhere.
No, 4,500 gold now. 2 dead for the next 10 seconds, and Hurrywind is the target. Variety looking for it. Might be able to pick up the kill. Goes up into the cloud, but Aegis is good.
Does eventually end up getting the kill. Hurwin waiting patiently on that. They should be able to trade out this kill. No good escape there from Variety. A little bit of peel from Tings. And that was much needed. Variety insisting on getting his team on the board there, and maybe Hurwin not respecting the all-in commitment. But remember, Mike had a chain there that he just barely missed. If that connects, they just turn that fight around.
I think so. Thin margins, but that's what the Kings have to do. You can't just assume the Dragons are going to play perfectly at every opportunity. You have to put them to the test, and Variety does it there. He forces the Dragons to play perfectly, and fortunately for him, not this time, able to pick up a kill for his team. The first one on the board for the Camelot Kings. That's going to be a good morale boost. You don't want to go down with nothing on the board.
Yeah, that's going to help them, I think, a lot. Knowing that Variety can be that force for them, knowing that, as you said, the Dragons are not going to be perfect 100% of the time, but it feels like they are enough, aren't they? They're close enough, for sure, to where that presence can be felt. The constant threat of them pulling off yet another miraculous play to turn the fight around. How does Sam, in that fight on KSI Jungle, not get Cuckoo ulted, by the way? My man finds a way out of that. This team continues to walk the line as Twig moves in. Sam is the target. His beads come out early. Crush does not connect, and once again, a little bit off the mark with that Cuckoo ult, and the Kings back off after not quite finding their engage.
Tings has been pretty willy-nilly with these ultimates. He isn't really waiting up for any for setup for him. He isn't waiting for Genetics to go for the skyhook. We're not doing it off cap forms. Big man Tings is tossing him out, just trying to find whatever he can to start off these fights, almost using that Kukulkan ultimate as an engage, and it hasn't quite panned out for him just yet. You're going to need that ability up for next time Captain Twig goes for the 9 turns blessing, or maybe even the washing machine ultimate from Jing Shen. I want to see Camelot Kings play together just a little bit more cohesively.
It's going to have to be the call from him. I think that is the core combo of this team. I mean, we said something similar in Baronic and Layers' game the other day, where this combo has to function for this team to really get off to a good start. And there's a couple ways for it to, but without it, I think it does sap away some of their strength. Good news is I think that combo is still plenty strong. Level 18 for Tings, Thoth and Magus both finished and on the way to an Ob Shard. It's certainly going to hurt when they eventually connect, as Variety went hunting into the Order side jungle, got there just a little too early for speed. I wonder if my man will even know that he was but 4 seconds away from it. Though with Sam on the way, maybe he wouldn't have wanted to stick around.
Next POI on the map is going to be Gold Fury, synced timer with Pyromancer. We'll get to see how both these teams elect to play it. The Camelot Kings likely going to try and put up a defense wherever the Jade Dragons show up. Oni Fury is that important this late in the game. Being able to split up the map with just minions would open up the Dragons to moving in towards the most important neutral objective, the Fire Giant. Camelot Kings put in a tough situation now, have to put up a defense, and I think Variety being on the left side of the map there kind of gives us an indicator. They know Jade Dragon's likely going to start up the gold, and the Camelot Kings want to be there for the defense.
And take a look at the map too. Those side lane towers have gone down in favor of the Jade Dragons. That's a little bit less safety there for the Kings, as Mike caught out a bit early, forced into the no escape. That will not get the pull on to Genetics though, who makes his way back out. That's the blink down for him. Just about all. Let's find okay, the next target here in mid. Variety and Twig cannot catch up. Genetics ult was used as Crush.
Oh my God.
And Sikkim hit too. I'm a monster. Finds Variety and Twig falls as well. Jade Dragons just making it happen, manufacturing kills in the middle lane.
Yeah, Sikkim hits too, and then Panda Cat's just there with Desert Fury. That is coordinated play. That damage output was nearly perfect. Both of those kills happened so fast. Variety doesn't even get a chance to go into the Somersault Cloud. Falls immediately. 30 seconds left on the Soul Laner and the Jungler. What do the Jade Dragons do? They strip away Oni Fury, regroup, looking at Tier 1 in mid and Tier 2 in left. This is tough going for the Kings. No defense to be seen.
It happened so fast. And suddenly, here the Dragons are with the 5v3 advantage and ready to start taking away more. This is what it feels like to play against one of the very best teams that we have. At times, it seems like there are no options, though I feel like every time I talk about how good this team is, I'm forced to give PK credit for beating them in 2 worlds in a row and finding a way to conquer it eventually, but for the vast majority of the year, this team looks exactly like this.
Yeah, what did they drop last year? 3-4 sets, and one of them just happened to be Worlds Finals, a tough situation. And even
Unlucky.
just then, in the Tier 1 tower, we got to see FidoK just kind of dropping his ego on the table. Says, all right, big man Tings, I'll stand a tornado. What can you do? Well, maybe start up the Fire Giant. Burning quickly. FidoK's there, though. Can you do it into him?
This is a Hail Mary play. The Kings do strip away the Fire Giant, and they're going to get away with mostly 4 lives. That's already worth, though Sam goes up. can't find anyone, will settle for Variety, who should be the one kill that he wants to take. Good point. He's been going after him all game. That's pretty big for the Kings. Not only does it even things up a bit, but it really slows down the Dragons.
It does. How are the Dragons going to respond? 4 members with Fire Giant on the sides of the Kings, and it seems like the Dragons aren't really too concerned about it. Instead, Tier 2 Tower immediately being sieged. They know the Kings have to go back to base just to reset after that, and PBM's got the information that Genetics is just getting outplayed in the jungle. A little juke there. Unfortunate washing machine. Yeah, maybe the Jade Dragons are just right. Just keep pushing.
Yeah, looks like maybe they are. That is what we're talking about. We mean this influence. We talk about they're putting out the aura hunter style right now. They can feel their bloodlust in the air, and the Kings are forced to retreat in front of it time and time again. But that Fire Giant play was huge. That was them inflicting their own will here in this game and finding a way to put some pause into a Jade Dragons team that rarely breaks stride. I think they're going to have to find a couple more plays like that, though, to get this game back to even, because the Dragons still found ways to get a little bit more gold and stretch the lead out.
But we are getting to the point in the game, 25, 30-ish minutes in, where one team fight, despite all these towers still being up on the side of Dragons, and all the towers are up on the side of the Dragons, wouldn't really matter if the Camelot Kings can just wipe them cleanly just one time. The death timers are that long that they could potentially end the game. But Fire Giant on 4. Looks like they're going to go for a power play, try and strip away some of these towers. Tier 1's not worth defending, but Sam for Soccer, again, puts up a defense.
Twig steps up and takes 758 from Crush. Variety moves in as well, but forced to retreat, so it's Genetics' turn next. But no escape is the response. That pulls no one, and Mike thrown in. Cuckoo flattens him, but Hurwin somehow still puts down Genetics first. Sam dunks into the back and fine okay. Forced to retreat, but Mike does fall to Variety elsewhere, and Sam, dunking in, cannot find the kills. So Netroid uses his ultimate purely to slow down the Dragons, and the Kings are on the retreat. But does that feel like Fire Giant versus non-Fire Giant there, as the Kings still looking to retreat?
Sam for Soccer goes
Variety.
Variety looks to punish. You can't be doing that one. Hurry, Wind. And Variety should know by now that he's been the target all game. Falls down. Panda Cat, world champion, tag in tow. See if maybe he can keep chasing him out.
Twig has now been perfectly walled off by Sam yet again. But can Panda Cat find these autos? Yes, Sam gets in there and cleans it up. Looks like when you and I play jungle there a little bit. But in the end, that kill does go the way of Jade Dragons. That's impressive, man. How do you feel about the call in general, though, for the Kings to go on the offense there? They had Fire Giant, and they start grouping up to push down right.
The Camelot Kings, I'll tell you exactly what their comms sound like. No way Jade Dragons even care if we go to a Tier 1 tower, right? That's just 500 gold for us. Surely they'd be willing to let us have it. And PBM says no, Sanford Soccer says no, and trades out just the support's life in exchange for 2 of their Fire Giant buffs and 1 Tier 1 tower. Jade Dragons, they come out ahead there despite losing the permanent objective.
They do. The Jade Dragons find a way to do it yet again, to turn that fight around, and it's off all these strong engage tools. The no escape is a dissuade to the front line of the Kings moving in. Sam at any time has the ability to fall back in, and Hurwin is just hitting everything. We're not giving my man enough credit.
He doesn't
we like to call him the very best Giannis in the world, but it's starting to look like he can just play whatever, as the Syl is looking pretty good too.
Yeah. Before too long, if he keeps up performances like this, we might just have to drop the Giannis from that sentence. The very best in the world. Not far off with the performance we've been seeing so far, but it's only week 1. He's going to have to earn that title. Gold Fury getting started up now by the Jade Dragons, and good call, Kings. I wouldn't step up either.
Yeah, I want to make sure that Paul has that title right now. There is no doubt on this call about who that is currently, so it's the man that was a one-man wrecking ball at Worlds. But Hurwin might be closer in the rear view than Paul would have thought as part of this Jade Dragons roster. So they're going to group up and start pushing in right, or rather not pushing, but setting up for this Fire Giant fight. Let's look at the sentries. Tons in the inventory for the Dragons, but the Kings are already here, Myth. They're going to have to push in just to start warding the Dragons.
Looks like the Kings are trying to start the fight on their own foot. Sanford Soccer stops that aggression with the ball, and fine, okay. Yeah, he's going in, and he's full health still.
Yeah, call it ambulance, but not for me. Sam dunks onto Tings and puts him down. Genetics is the next one that's forced to see the big-time crit numbers. Next, they look for Variety, who makes out on their Somersault Cloud, but there's already been 2 removed. A 2 for 0 in favor of the Dragons, and that was the Kings starting to fight again. And before, Miff, you explain why the Dragons won that, can I at least give the Kings credit for never once shrinking away from one of these fights? They keep looking for him.
I think at some point you might want them to shrink away from some of these fights, but as you said, give them their credit. Let me talk about what the Dragons did. Sam for Soccer spots out the Kings and immediately says, stop. Stop in your tracks, I'm going to drop a wall, and then fine, okay. The mad lad, no fear in his heart whatsoever, jumps into 4 people on his own, creating the space and the time for the rest of his team to work their way forward. Big man Tings was the target, and he falls down. Genetics forced to peel, he falls down as well. Fire Giant now on 5 members of the Dragons, and they're already knocking on the door of the base.
Yeah, and some key starter item upgrades are here as the Jade Dragons move into the right side. Phoenix. Yeah, the crit build's starting to look pretty darn strong to me. Finds 2 of them in a row, and Variety's like, okay, I guess this is my life now. As the Dragons threaten 2 lanes at once. It's 4 in right, 1 in mid, and Sam can join just about any time with that ultimate once he sees fit. But they bring Variety over to try and keep Sam in check.
They do. 4-1 split right now, and it
he's taking
feels like the Jade Dragons are just biding their time. Has Variety not taken a fight yet this game? He is
that's a good point.
Undeterred despite all the aggression towards him now. He does not win the 1v1 up against Sam for Soccer. All he can do is try and keep the wave outside the Phoenix so he can't have it pushed in. So what do the Jade Dragons do? They regroup as 5 and try and look for an opportunity.
Right side Phoenix still the call. And they still have plenty of time on this Fire Giant buff, a little under 240 to their name to break this base open. And you get the feeling that if they do so, it'll be clean. Fine OK first. Tings is the target early on. But Fine OK moves back towards the rest of the squad. Phoenix at half HP. And with the minion wave in, they take the Phoenix cleanly. Sam was up just in case, but not much needed. They'll take that right side pretty easily.
Looked like Fine OK got bored of waiting, didn't it? Just says, all right, guys, that's enough of a defense. We know you're not willing to lose your lives here. Blinks forward, immediately onto Tings, drops the ultimate, transforms, and the Camelot Kings had no recourse. They immediately back up, and that Phoenix falls with very little resistance. Now only 2 birds standing between the Jade Dragons and the exposed base of the Camelot Kings. I want to see the Kings put up a hard defense on one of these Phoenixes. They can't keep letting the Dragons do whatever they want.
Looks like as soon as that push is over, they will push up and take whatever they can, knowing the Dragons have to look for a reset. But I think this needs to be pretty quick, in and out. No, it's a trap, Miff. They want to catch a member or 2 walking through the jungle on their own. Mike will be the first man in as the Kings will spring their trap. Variety sees him, and then Mike engages. I love it. Not an ounce of fear in their hearts. And Sam takes to the sky in the back. I think the Kings might have bit off more than he can chew as Kukuot finds nothing. Sam lands onto Twig in the back, but he is low and hurt and forced to disengage.
Now PBM trying to re-engage himself. What am I talking about? It's Fine OK. He never exited the fight. Forces the Aegis out of Netrioid. And now we're looking at another small reset. But PBM, he's healed up with Fire Giant and he wants to go back in.
Yeah, he does. He wants to even grab some of these Kings while they are low and before they can reset. That was the Kings kind of setting a trap around the corner, waiting, kind of holding the angle, pre-aiming, and instead the Dragons just walk right on in. They're like, yeah, we know it's a trap, and we can beat it. Can't quite find any kills there, but that's all the ultimates down, all the relics down. For Netroid, Ting still has his. Jade Dragons want to put pressure on this left side Phoenix already.
And the Camelot Kings are still licking their wounds from that skirmish. They're not here for the defense, it's just Variety, and we've seen how quickly he can fall.
And he takes a big crit and crush. Sam gets the kill. That is it for Variety, who becomes a distant memory and memoriam for Genetics as Heroin just finds the shots. Can't get the dunk, but won't do it. And Netroid gets deleted as well. Sam gets the double, but Heroin provides the damage. 5v2, and this Titan doesn't have a chance.
Twig and Tings have to put on their capes. Hero play in the making, and Tings still cowering inside the fountain. Titan's falling fast.
Big. That does manage to hit Heroin, but he used the Aegis perfectly, and the Dragons, 30 minutes, 33 seconds on the clock, close out the game, 19-2. The only man on the side of the Kings with a kill is Variety, and that's the person they had the most pressure on. Myth, how clean are the Dragons right now?
I'm glad you asked me a question like that so I could just say incredibly clean, right? I mean, that was a 30-minute game, but it almost felt like the Dragons could have ended it whenever they wanted to.
Yeah, it did, right? The Dragons were playing that one cleanly, patiently, and kind of forcing the Kings to come into them. I kind of can't get over the thematic of them setting the trap, the Kings, and Jade Dragons walking into it kind of on purpose. Just gives you an idea of what these guys are capable of. Now, we're going to take a quick break, come back and have the desk break it down.
It's more of the same from the Jade Dragons. Same as what we saw yesterday. Apparently that translates well in here into today. And if you want to join the legions of the Jade Dragons, Jazzberry Jams, whatever they call themselves, make sure to check out shop.smiteproleague.com. Shoutouts to Insight Apparel, our clothing sponsor here for this year. If you don't want a jersey, they got hoodies, t-shirts, all that sort of fun stuff. Bottom right there is a big fan favorite team, not only in the jersey department, but in the favorites to win this set department, I think, after game number one. Some sweet jerseys there. Shoutouts to Insight Apparel Company. Shop.smiteproleague.com. Make sure to go online. Check that out. Maybe grab yourself a jersey or some other articles of clothing. Agro, you and I still together here, though, to discuss whatever it was that just happened there in game number one. Giannis, not Giannis, doesn't matter. Hurrywind looked good on the Scylla. Dominance over in the solo lane. Thanks in large part to Stanford Soccer setting up a little tent on that side of the map. Whatever it was, the game plan worked.
Look, man, I mean, I was talking so much about how much I love the way the Kings were playing the map, that they looked coordinated and together, and that their planning looked good. And Tyson said it best, man. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth, and I feel like that's exactly what happened to the Camelot Kings in this game. They just were not ready for the pace of the Jade Dragons. Dragons came in. It's not like it was minute 4 or minute 8 even. You know, it was past 10 minutes where they really started to turn up the jets. But this team, they just show up and show up and show up, and they just wait for you to make your fatal mistake. But they do so by being proactive. I think that I've been critical in the past of teams who just wait to capitalize on mistakes. I think that's because those teams oftentimes don't force teams to make mistakes. I think the Jade Dragons really do just force teams into making those types of those game-losing mistakes. And credit where it's due to the Kings, that play to go for fire, to put themselves back in this game, that was a really big play that impressed me to have that wherewithal to be able to do it. Unfortunately, it just didn't matter because the Kings, or the Dragons rather, just did this to them instead.
Well, and that was part of our concern around the Kukulkan, right? I mean, was the fact that though it was just one death for Big Man Tings, Sanford Soccer can just kind of free and clear dunk into that back line. One death for Hurrywind, one death for PBM. I gotta say, one moment I think that just kind of encapsulated that game is the Kings setting up a trap on the purple buff side of the Jade Dragons jungle.
Yes.
And PBM walks into it and then blinks in and engages while the rest of his team is in there on the follow-up. If that's not a play that expresses some confidence in the game state and in the rest of your team to follow up. Now, the fight ended up being a wash. But the fact that Mike's immediate response to being surprised by 5 members of the opposing team is to blink in and try to fight, I think speaks volumes.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that he wasn't surprised. That's just good communication coming out.
Fair enough.
When you're resetting, you got to be talking about what's going to happen. You should be thinking about what the enemy team can be doing. I'm sure that someone on the team said, hey, they might be trying to group up and surprise us in left side jungle. And I'm sure that Mike said, if they do that, let me go first. If I see them, I'm going to kill all of them. That's almost certainly what he said in that moment. And no hesitation. Like, he sees variety and just assumes the rest of the team is around the corner and cannonballs in to the middle of the Camelot Kings. And even though that fight didn't even go that well for the Jade Dragons, it didn't go poorly. It set up that dive on the left side Phoenix, got a lot of those relics out from the backliners, and set up their eventual game-winning push. So impressive stuff from the Jade Dragons. Got a feeling I'm going to be saying that a lot this year. This team's really, really good at Smite.
Yeah, that's about all that needs to be said, I think, about these guys. Granted, one extra game in hand, but with that win there, Sanford Soccer jumps as the kill leader right now here in Season 8. 18 kills, Shinto right behind him at 14. That gap, I think, is going to grow here in game number 2. Picks and bans about to kick off here for game number 2, and that will grow, Aggro. That gap between the kill leader and everyone who's chasing him will continue to expand if the Dragons are able to consistently get Sanford Soccer on these types of picks. It's, again, now 3 for 3. He's showed us the Thor. We had we had the Osiris yesterday, a Thanatos from Sam. I mean, the variety in the mid lane is something that we're going to have to grow and learn, see what Hurrywin's God pool looks like. But it should be no surprise that Sam is versatile and can kind of pick up whatever the draft gives him.
Yeah, it's what's made him so difficult to stop in the jungle, is that he is not one-dimensional in any way. He can play a lot of different styles, but he always seems to end up carrying no matter what he's playing. So it doesn't really matter what he ends up locking in. Gotta say, I think that the continued focus on a final K is warranted. He has been dominant so far. He's been the primary engage tool for the Dragons so far in all of their games. I mean, you think of the fight on the right-hand side behind the Fire Giant pit where he blinks in and creates infinite space. That's where we saw the highlight of Sam coming in and dunking at the very back of that. That was all because of Final K's work. I've been super impressed with his decision-making. That's been the thing for him, is that sometimes in those moments he ends up going a little bit too far, a little bit too happy on those engages to dive in. He's towed that line very well. He's really initiated perfectly so far this season.
Wow. And
that warrants double bans. He gets King Arthur and Cucullin banned from him, and then the Giannis ban as well. So now you're looking at, again, a lot of stuff open. Yamoja's still open. Mike didn't go for it last time. That's worth noting. But if the trend will continue, it will likely be the Jade Dragons picking on her here, plus something for Fine OK. They've top 2'd Panicat and Fine's Gods each game so far. Then Hurwin's pick third, and they might continue to bottom pick PBM and Sam.
You wonder how sad Fine OK is really feeling here, as the on her is indeed locked in. I gotta go to Wukong or Guan Yu, I guess. I mean, the two picks that we've also seen banned out pretty heavily, 2 very strong picks in the solo lane. So it's that constant struggle. We actually had this conversation around that SSG team last year where it felt like everyone on that team warranted themselves at least one specific ban, and it made them such a hard team to strategize against in the pick ban phase. The Dragons, with some extra variety, might continue to be that. It's going to be on her Scylla, so Aggro, both backliners locked in early on here for the Dragons. I suppose one boon to the Dragons draft here is that they haven't really revealed all that much. They still have the ability to weave in some interesting picks, jungle, solo, and support.
Yeah, back to the Wukong there for variety. just want to see him not go that Soul Eater early on. He went a little bit too hybrid damage. I mean, we saw him solo out Heroine in the mid lane for that one kill, but for the most part, this Jade Dragons team is not one that you're going to be able to counter dive that effectively sometimes. Depending on what Twig ends up going in the jungle, I'd probably want Variety to go a little bit more defensive, but at that point, why are you even picking Wukong if you're going a little bit more defensive in the build? So maybe he ends up sticking with that really aggressive option. I think it clearly came back to hurt them, though, because that's where that lead was generated on that right-hand side. Just being able to put pressure there because they know it takes so much time for that Soul Eater to get stacked up and actually put threat on the map.
Now, there is some flexibility here, Aggro, with this Osiris lock-in. The one and only time we've seen it so far this season, it was Sam for Soccer out of the jungle. I believe there was a triple kill in that game for Sam. Looked very good. Kukulkan taken away. So Big Man Ting's out of the mid lane for the first time this year, and his 4th game of the year is going to have to play something a little bit different out of mid. We'll have to wait and see what the Dragons end up drafting 4th and 5th. But do you imagine that still goes over to Sam in the jungle, or is this a true flex pick where, depending on how the rest of the draft builds out, you can stick it in Fine OK's hands as well?
I'd assume it's a true flex pick because Fine has played a lot of this god. It fits that same initiator style that he's been going for with the Arthur and with that Cullen. You can get fights started with the Osiris, and yeah, the Kings feel like they're going to try and cover their bases. Thor also a flex pick for this team because Fine has played that in the solo lane, and they ban another flex option since Mike still needs his pick in that Cerberus.
So
yeah, it really is. I mean, I don't know what you ban if you're the Kings here. I mean, Sam could go Tsukiyomi at this spot. Tsukiyomi and Set are both still open if they like it, and this looks like it's likely to be support Fenrir. It's got a really good matchup up against Jingwei, and that's usually where Mike goes to this pick. It's because he knows the back line is going to be particularly susceptible to it. Ymir also can struggle against it at times, just that instant CC initiation. But one thing that makes Fenrir a lot worse these days is that tank boots are really, really strong. And even though he doesn't have a lot of dot damage to stack up those tank boots, it's the CCR that are ingrained in the tank boot stats means that you can't consistently get that Unchained stun into a Ragnarok combo. Players can use CC immunity in between. So someone like Ymir or Wukong, who normally would just be dead to rights, if they go tank boots, they can get their ultimates off if they're spamming that 4 button in between. Something to watch out for if it does go, in particular, into Mike's hands.
Agreed, and there's still some flexibility remaining at the end of the draft for the Jade Dragons. Raijin, Big Man Tings, was the last one who needed a pick there. Raijin somewhat safe, the ability to play back and do great damage while doing so. 2 games played, 100% win rate for Raijin out of the mid lane Hunbats, though. For Captain Twig here, the ability to initiate in on some of these fights is maybe something that the Kings thought they were missing there in game number 1. Now you get the full 5 aggro. Ymir back for Genetics paired with Jingwei, so some very comfort picks there for the duo laners here for the Camelot Kings. But let's talk about the last 2 picks that they've locked in, Hunbats and the Raijin. How do you think that fits into the rest of the draft?
I like it. They're CC heavy. I mean, between Wukong, Ymir, Hunbats, that's a lot of pressure on purification beads. You've got lots of options there for them. Raijin, I've talked about a lot. I think he's a premier mid lane mage right now. Can actually get away from things like the Fenrir. I was expecting a Raijin once that Fenrir got locked in, because with Scylla already off the table, you're pretty limited in picks that don't feel completely shut down by the Fenrir. So I like the pick there for Big Man Tings. This Jade Dragons team, they are going to gun you down, man. I mean, 2 warriors and an assassin who usually builds pretty tanky. I would anticipate it's going to be... I'm actually going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to go Fenrir support, Hercules solo, Osiris jungle. That's the way I think it's going to go. Of course, Mike could take the Hercules into the support role, give the Osiris over to Fine OK, and let Sam pilot that Fenrir. It is a pick that he likes. But I think that with the way that Sam played that Osiris, with the way that they want Fine OK to be the primary initiator for them, that lineup makes slightly more sense. I think Hercules is a little bit better at blinking in and getting a fight started than someone like Osiris is. He puts more pressure on relics than Osiris does.
Well, obviously, you and I are sitting here kind of theory crafting where these final 3 picks may go. It's the Kings who now have to load into game and figure out what direction their lane might go. Is that something that really changes gameplay strategy on the fly? Something like an Osiris jungle versus solo? I suppose maybe it's really the jungle pick that starts to differentiate your game plan, because that's going to be the one roaming and ganking maybe a little bit more often, at least in the early game. How much do you think that is living in the Kings' heads right now, that it's kind of hard to figure out where these bottom 3 picks are going to go?
I don't think it's too much. I mean, you've got all of loading cards, of course, in order to get that plan formulated, and I think that it's really more on an individual basis for variety, say in that solo lane, who he's going up against. Maybe it changes how many pots he takes to lane, or if he starts boots or not, those sorts of things. Where the duo lane wants to start, I mean, we've seen the start where Sam and Hurry both start at red, then Sam kind of loops underneath to go towards speed and the rest of his right side jungle. That frees up Mike to go and invade the red, because it hasn't been that start so far for the Kings. It's been BMT and Twig starting on speed, and then going the more traditional route where Twig comes back underneath after doing his back harpies, and then comes the red buff. That nearly got stolen away by Mike in game 1. Now he's playing something like the Fenrir or the Hercules, either one, whatever one he takes. He has a lot more secure potential. He has a lot more fight potential than he did on that Ares. So I think I'd be changing where we're starting if we're the Kings, but have they practiced a different start? It's not something that you can just go, oh, okay, we'll just change up what we do. You got to make sure that you know your timing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm interested to see how the Kings are going to start in this match. And I think that whatever support Mike has does influence that more than anything else.
And adapting on the fly is key for both of these teams here. We've talked, I think, pretty consistently about this Jade Dragons draft. You look over towards the Kings, the full 5 there, Ymir Sun, Wukong, Jingwei, Hunbats, Raijin. Is that a team that gives you some confidence in the mid to late game team fights?
Definitely. I think they've got great potential in those late game team fights. Plenty of damage, good mobility, good CC. This is just a well-rounded draft from the Camelot Kings, but where are they generating that pressure? I mean, Jingwei versus Anher, you're conceding that lane in terms of pressure. Can Variety do a better job than he did in game 1?
Well, without further ado, Jade Dragons, Camelot Kings, game number 2.
Thanks again, Dolson and Agro on the desk. Finch and Miff still here as the conversation about these starts begin, and the Dragons aggressive already moving into the jungle and seeing what perhaps they can find if anyone from the Kings comes out too far. Miff, what do you make of it?
I'm sorry, I was just shook by the fact that PBM in the year 2021 is playing Hercules support. I feel like it was not too long ago that this was a 4-span for him every single time. I'm surprised as well to see that it's actually Fenrir jungle. I guess everyone on the Camelot Kings is going to be forced into picking up beads, and Variety and Twig going for the blink that early, that's going to be tough. Variety, you were the target last time. I think Sam might be over there with a Ragnarok ultimate with your name on it.
Well, looks like they're back to this traditional start. It's ADC and mid laner on red, jungle and solo doing speed together, and support starts purple, and then eventually meets up with the ADC later. Can't believe we all agreed to just, like, get, to take those 2 side ones by themselves, just give the ADC just the big one. But, listen, I know we get everything and crit already. I won't complain. Listen here, Miff. When do they go with those 2 starts? Does it need to be something that you pick up, like, kind of as a surprise to go with that other start, or what's your read on when you do those 2?
Well, considering Jade Dragons does it again this game, I think they just might prefer how much pressure it gives to their duo lane, especially when you have an aggressive duo lane like Hercules and Anher. You want them able to rotate in first so they can establish lane pressure, control that mid camp, and then work their way back forward and try and take the fight. If anything, maybe you have the ADC split the red if you're really worried about getting him over to level 2 first, but I really do like this start for the Dragons, and it helps out your jungler so much. Desyncing the timer on speed and red buff means that jungler is going to get the farm from speed and red buff every single time.
Allows them to be aggressive. We'll see what Genetics and Atroid can do. They've got the Ymir, your typically aggressive support, but it's against a Jingwei, or paired with a Jingwei, so perhaps aggression won't really be the call. And we have seen Jingweis with this crit build get online relatively quickly. If you're Captain Twig, though, how do you play up until this pre-level 12 point? Because I think you've got to be really afraid of all the CC that could come your way. As fine, okay, nearly with a chance to solo Variety there. The minion pressure goes the other direction, so he sticks off. But what is your approach to this game if you're playing Twig with the Blink Unbots here?
I think, if anything, if you think Sanford Soccer is going to try and rerun that strategy from game 1 of camping out your solo lane, you could have Twig play this counter engage role, wait for Sam to head over there, drop the Fear No Evil off a Blink, and try and peel out for variety. Or you could just play that counter engage role in your own jungle. We know that Jade Dragons eventually will not be able to help themselves. They're going to go into your jungle, and they're going to try and steal away something, and Hun Bots is incredibly versatile and strong. The second he takes over to level 5, he can just make sure he's playing that disengage role. He doesn't have to be really looking for proactive plays on the map himself.
Well, here's Sam looking proactive indeed. There's the stun, but Mike,
he might kill him.
Instead, working on purple, so it'll be the all-in commit, and Sam ends up falling for it. So yes, first blood goes over to the Dragons, but Sam falls right behind. Purple also does get invaded. Give me the breakdown on how you like it.
I think Sam's right to do it. It puts his ADC slightly behind in experience. Had Netroid been able to clear the wave, but instead, Sam for Soccer catches him between the towers immediately once the wave's already going into Netroid's tower, meaning that Jingwei misses out on 6 entire minions, and then first blood bounty goes over to the Fenrir, who should be able to get his items online just a little bit more quickly. I have to take a peek at the exact XP charts to see how that one pans out, but I have to assume Panda Cat's feeling just fine with that trade.
And then Sam comes back in time to defend his back Harpies up there. Captain Twig was looking for an invade, knowing that Sam had fallen, so that didn't work out. But now Sam's the one looking for the invade and getting aggressive. Twig in some trouble as Brutalized continues to be strong, but Sam forced to retreat once Variety shows up, and he might have to retreat all the way back to base if he is not careful, as Twig is re-engaged, and Sam drops down. That is 2 early deaths for the Dragon's jungler.
You do not want your Fenrir tumbling this early on. Now we're starting to see him suffering for it, already at an XP deficit as well, meaning that Captain Twig takes over to level 5 first, should be able to get involved a little bit earlier on. Sam for Soccer elects to go for the auto attack tree as well, likely going to be a stone cutting sword in that first slot instead of going for that traditional bruiser style. Even what he went on Thor was on Chile in that slot. This Fenrir is going to be very exposed this game.
You know, this drop, or these early drops for him are hurting him already at this point in the game. But I like that Sam is being really, really aggressive with it. In Game 1 on the Thor, we saw him kind of posting up in those blue buffs on the right side of the map and looking for engages onto Variety kind of only. But this game, he's been all over the place. Has already impacted Duo and was even looking to strip some farm away back here on this right side as well. Sam's everywhere, and I want him to keep that aggression, but maybe rein it in just a bit here, Miff. He's been punished too much already.
Yeah, just temper it a little bit. Choose your fights once you're able to have your supports rotate out. Play around Hurry Win. Use that ultimate on targets that don't have beads. If he is able now that he's ticked over to level 5, isolate Twig again. Now the fight's really going to favor him. I think maybe he just got a little bit overexcited at that level 4 point. Now both teams returning to a state of neutral. It's been a quiet performance over here in the duo lane, but Mike blinking forward. Good luck, Genetics. There goes the beads.
Has that on support early on this game. But if I'm Sam for Soccer, there's a beacon over here in the duo lane, man. Genetics should be relatively easy to grab. Shard Device still does pose some problems for him in terms of its CC immunity, but then he's just standing still, so hopefully still creates an advantage for the Jade Dragons. That's going to have to be their game plan, as Fine-OK once again seems ahead in their dueling solo. Has got to be to use how good this team is at burning beads team-wide to really open up for Sam.
Take a peek at PBM's build. He went for the Boots Rush, immediately goes into the Reinforced Greaves, and then buys Benevolence, knowing that on Hercules, you want to make sure you hit that level 5 point as quickly as possible, get your gold available to you as well, and now he's shifting his focus to a more support role. That's an incredibly interesting start. I really like it. We'll see how it pans out for Mike, and whether or not he's going to start to use it to rotate out, or if he's going to keep hanging out in this duo lane.
Dragons have their own approach to how they want to start off this early game. And it looks like even included is where and when they go about picking up these starter items. The Benevolence was the one in that case. So we talked a lot about how Sam could get set up by the lack of beads, but it is the same for Twig with Fear No Evil. I mean, that is a death sentence for whoever it is that he traps in that ultimate once he's able to find them without those purification beads. And Sam and Mike both don't have them as greater. Scorpion is on the menu here for the Kings. They rotate in. grab it cleanly and enhance their buffs. Sam notices, leaps in, but cannot find the Brutalize, and Sam ults instantly. There's that Charge Device response as well, and Sam just ends up getting punished, frozen in the early game. Struggles for Sam continue, but Genetics drops in trade support for jungle. But Mike, trying to continue the aggression, knows how low Netroid and Twig are. Does manage to find the pull into the auto. Mike gets it done again.
Let that be a reminder to the entire SPL. This is why you used to ban out Mike's Hercules. But we got to take it back a little bit further to see how that fight really pans out. Sam for Soccer jumps in onto Captain Twig, realizes the jump would have been good, so immediately goes into the Ragnarok. Unfortunately for him, Twig uses the blink to escape it, and then from there, it was actually pretty intelligent play. Walks past the Amir inside the Shards of Ice and tries to catch out Netroid, who's forced to use his ultimate defensively. Sam essentially trades out his life for 3 ultimate cooldowns. Sets up his team pretty well.
Fine, okay, in trouble here in solo. Tings, Twig, and Variety all here, but Sam is on his way as well. He just needs Fine to keep them stuck around, and Twig does take the bait, so can Sam find his opening? Does come in with the Brutalize, that's big damage, but Tings was waiting in the wings all along, comes in with Thunder Crash, that disrupts. And the Camelot Kings keep everyone alive despite their low health totals. But with Mike here, the hunt is on. Blue buff is the mark and the target. Can't quite get there. The Kings do a good job of defending it. And it looks like the Dragons just going to have to go settle for some invades elsewhere. Some Harpies taken, but nothing as painful as what perhaps could have happened.
No, that was a good defense from the Kings, making sure they're able to get their own buff, especially considering the Jade Dragons were able to find the pressure there, forcing out the jump from Tings, as well as just getting the damage output onto Variety. Now, the reset back to neutral, and that entire time, Tings was rotating over to try and alleviate that pressure in solo. What was happening in mid? Hurrywin was just farming up, waiting for that late game, waiting until Distilla has one-shot potential. The Jade Dragons, despite being down in gold and XP a little bit across the board, have been dictating the pace of this game nonetheless.
Yeah, they have been, and I want to make sure we're giving them plenty of credits to King in game 1. I liked how they played. I know you were saying that maybe a little bit more, patience, staying back a little bit, waiting for your spots would have helped, but I like that they took the fight to the Dragons and never let themselves get too intimidated. And here in game 2, they've actually actioned on that. They have really kind of waited for the Dragons to overcommit and responded. As Panda Cat and Mike considering chasing Netroid, that will not happen. And it's put them in a good spot here through these first 9 minutes through a Jade Dragons whose early game is nigh unstoppable at times. They've kept themselves in it, if not slightly ahead. I've been impressed with the way this team's played.
And this is a new team, by the way. These are guys who have not had a lot of experience playing together, and this is, their second set this year. They are doing incredibly well against a very veteran team. As Genetics caught out in the jungle. That's a tough one. Punched into the wall and immediately loses his life. Panda Cat, though, wants to keep chasing out the fight. Netroid, of course, used the ultimate defensively.
That almost did it. Twig is on his way now, but Panda Cat has made his way out, and now Twig is stuck between 3. Driving Strike takes him out of the crush, but does not matter. Fear No Evil connects, and that'll be the connection for Variety, the solo laner, to come in from the other side. They will get the kill onto Panda Cat to make it 1-for-1 ADC for Jungler. Just cannot believe that Variety made his way all the way over here to left.
Yeah, Variety's been all over the map both of these games, right? He's really been the driving force behind his team. When Variety is there, you know the Camelot Kings are looking for the engagement. Fine, left in the dust a little bit, maybe because he's a little bit further behind. He's a little bit slower on this Osiris, and now Genetics playing with fire, wants to make sure he's able to get back over towards mid. This time the Dragons aren't quite able to catch him.
I don't know if they even knew he was there before it was a little too late. But good work by the Kings once again, having that response over there in left mid, responding, getting Variety involved early on in this one is huge for this team. Last game, he got their only 2 kills, was being an active participant. I think he's done a great job as part of this roster, as now the Kings again take this Greater Scorpion, and that's something the Kings have been very willing to do, is come on over here and grab this Fireside. Scorpion as Variety has become the target, but inside the Ox form, chased out by the Brutalize, and Sam finds the kill.
The damage output, absolutely ridiculous. You're able to auto-cancel off the jump to get some of that penetration rolling from Stone Cutting Sword. Makes that Brutalize tick for so much more. You also got the power built in from Seething Howl, and now we get to see what the damage output is like. Variety going for this less bruiser build, more sustained with Soul Eater immediately into shifters. It's kind of slow, doesn't have any defense online just yet. My man's not allowed to be a frontliner, and we know Sam for Soccer's got his number.
It's the build he went last game and was vulnerable to those early ganks from Sam when he came over to that lane. This game has not been quite the same, with Sam dunking down with those ults, as Sam and FineOK find themselves a 12-minute Pyromancer a little earlier than that, and Genetics getting his back stopped. One little whack there from Mike purely for the BM and to delay his opponent on the other side. But again, I'm not going to stop saying it, man. I like the way this Kings team has played, especially up against a really, really good opponent here in the Dragons, as Genetics finds himself a two-man stun. That forces Herwin into the beads. Twig responds, but Herwin is fast up into the I'm a Monster, and Twig not done chasing him yet with his jump down, and with Herwin still hitting the shot, the fade away. Could Hurry have played it any better?
Why is Twig diving there? Even if he hits the jump, even
Right.
with Hunbot's passive, I'm not sure he's able to find that kill. Maybe if he were willing to trade his ultimate just for the damage, but even then, a slight overextension for Twig costs him his life. No beads available because he elects to pick up the blink. That's a tough situation. Doesn't even get the ult off. Sent for Soccer, nice rotation, keeping the Jade Dragons in it. And that gold lead that the Camelot Kings had earlier is already starting to slip away. 13 minutes in, 3,000 gold up is the Chaos team.
It happened real quick, didn't it? Right around that 11-minute mark or so. That's when things started getting out of control for the Camelot Kings. Freeze from Genetics. He's the only one here, though, and Pandacat, rightfully so, does not panic. Desert Fury coming out, though. Now the commitment getting a little bit heavier from Pandacat, and that's with Sam rotating in on this underside. Can't quite catch up, though, so Genetics makes it out easily, and that's the Desert Fury down there from Pandacat.
What are the Jade Dragons going to do with all this pressure? Looks like they're trying to get control over the Camelot Kings buffs. They've got the timer. They had the ward, and now they've got your red as well. PBM going to be picking up that one. And Gold Fury already looked at. Oracle Vision theirs. Sent for Soccer. Going to shred it. Where are the Kings? They got to put up a defense.
I thought he might leave the vines up there on purpose, but it just does not matter. The Kings don't get it in time, and the Fury, confirmed by I'm a Monster from Herwin, goes over to the Dragons. And suddenly this game's starting to move over to the Dragons' favor. And I thought with Sam struggling a little bit in this early game that the Kings could control it, but that's not been the case as Mike walks up all alone just to punch Tings, and now stuck inside the CC. They got a lot of it with Variety rotating over and finding the kill.
Here's the thing about Mike Finch. I'm pretty sure he'd do it again regardless of outcome. My man is looking for that aggressive play style. Now, FineOK catches Variety, isolated in the jungle, and even a level down, is able to get the better end of that trade. Not much to fight over here, but Genetics could fall.
But instead, Sam switches targets instantly, forces out Tings, and they'll take the kill onto Genetics. So they end up trading out support for support. Mike much further ahead, so I think the Kings happy to take him down anytime they can. But the Dragons remain firmly in control here in this one. So now it becomes a question of how can the Camelot Kings facilitate Twig. He needs to be able to find some more impactful ultimates and make sure the squad's there to follow up. But it just hasn't been there for him. He had that dive onto Whirlwind, under the tier 1, kind of into the tier 2 a bit. I thought maybe he was waiting to ult him once the CC moved and the ult went away, but he was way too soon for that. They need some better opportunities for Twig to get off some really impactful Fear No Evils.
Yeah, we haven't seen any of them really, except for the one on Pio on left side of the map about 5 or 6 minutes ago. Twig looks like he's just waiting for his opportunity in a team fight as he moves over towards Pandacat. Blinks in, beats early.
Pandacat staying patient, jumps out, Fear No Evil, gets nothing, and now Sam is here for the return. Brutalize, does so much damage, and Twig punished yet again. We called his name, but not for that, and now Netroid walking right into a boulder and right into Sam for the double kill out of the jungle. And at this point, where can the Camelot Kings even turn to? I thought getting Twig involved was going to be the recipe, but Pandacat just stands his ground.
That was disrespectful play from Pandacat, and it continues in the center of the map. Sam for Soccer jumps into 3, but at least he gets punished. Big man Tings puts him down there. Red buff still up. What is going to happen? PBM seems like he knows better. Doesn't really want it. Tier 2 tower, though. Pandacat's working on it.
Oh, well, Mike was trying to get him some time to keep pushing. It wasn't there. Variety gets dunked by Hurwind all on his own. Comes back in with the Somersault Cloud. Hurwind looked like he still liked his chances. They'll certainly get this kill into Genetics. He gets caught out over in left. So across the map, blood continues to be spilled as FineOK now hunting down Variety. Pandacat and Mike rotating back up as well, but they'll be met by Tings, Netroid, and Twig. This is too many members here. I think that's why Pandacat abandons his support, leaves Mike to fend for himself, and Tings is now on a killing spree.
You know what? It may have been the right play, Finch, but it's not one that I love. Was it Kakashi that said only scum leaves their friends behind? Panda Cat prioritizing numero uno, and he's right to do it. All right, I can't fault him too much. No way did they take that 2v4. Phenomenal rotation from the Camelot Kings there to at least get something in exchange. And they're doing much better in Game 2, trying to keep it a lot closer. Only about 4,000 gold separating these two teams. That is not an insurmountable lead. One team fight can completely change the face of this game.
It does seem like the macro from the Jade Dragons, though, just a bit better as the Kings start up Pyromancer. Fine K is present, and the Pyromancer still healthy, about half HP, but has now been reset. So the freeze lands on the Fine K, knocked up as well, but not really much by way of damage follow-up. Sam looks more poked really than anything else, and most of that attention was set towards Fine K. So the Pyromancer reset and dropped. Does not end up getting grabbed by either team, and we reset back towards the neutral. The Kings are still, even at this point, looking for every chance they can get back into this. They wanted to take Pyro there, but just couldn't do it with Dragons so present.
And now the Dragons see your strategy. They looked at your playbook and they said, maybe we want the Pyromancer ourselves. Pull it for a split second, but catch Camelot Kings on a ward and decide maybe this is not our best opportunity. Panda Cat's starting to make his rotation over as well. Expect a team fight to erupt very soon. If not around this Pyromancer, at least Oni Fury spawning up.
We'll be able to battle over on the left side of the map here shortly, as these builds starting to get a bit rounded out. Herwin has Deso, Shoes the Mad Guy, and the Rada Tahuti right behind it. Meanwhile, Big Man Tings, I believe, went for the Charon's coin. We don't see a ton of anymore. As hold up, Pyromancer in the sight to the Dragons. They have it down below half, and Genetics is here to contest. Variety TP's in behind, so they switch targets instantly. Variety forced into the Somersault Cloud, and Dragons go right back towards the Pyromancer. Variety wants none of this, but in comes Captain Twig, drops the Fear No Evil. Jade Dragons get the Pyromancer, though, so Fino K and Sam jump back in. Twig punished. Tings ends up buried by the Herwin ultimate. I'm a Monster connects. And that means Jade Dragons up Pyro and 2 kills. Meanwhile, Panda Cat dangerously close to soloing Netroid on the left side. They force him out, and mid-tier 1 goes down.
Man, Panda Cat's been doing that the entire game, right? Hard to talk about, or maybe I shouldn't talk about that considering Jade Dragons do just win a team fight cleanly, but that might be the 6th, 7th, 8th time he's just jumped in at Netroid and goes unpunished. And now Jade Dragons with a huge opportunity. Twig dead for 10, Tings for 20, Fire Giant pulled, and Variety has no ult.
And so they jump in. Variety is stunned early, but Sam now low. The cudgel lands, but Variety's still the only casualty. Even Final K-Low makes his way out, but Netroid is now the target. Panda Cat jumps in, and Netroid gets around the rock. Has to use Aegis just to get away from Crush. Final K can't stick in, and boy did he try, but it just was not there. So the only extra life they claim is Variety, and the Dragons regroup once more. They recognize Genetics, and Final K literally just walks past the freeze directly through the wall thanks to his passive, and Genetics can't do much.
Look, the Jade Dragons might be, as a unit, the most disrespectful squad I've ever seen. You know Final K saw Genetics there, and just does not care. Fortunately, the Kings going to be able to get something in exchange, looking towards that Gold Fury. Sam for Soccer would rather take out Twig, though.
Yeah, I'd argue Sam was just giving up on the Fury and saw Twig. I don't think that was the original game plan for him. But he'll just take the kill that fell into his lap. Great work there from Sam to give the 5th death of the game over to Captain Twig. And now Tings at the target. Nothing he can do. Sam on a double kill. And can you believe he started this game out 0-2? It doesn't even seem possible with the performance he's having now.
Is Fenrir a late game hyper carry? I think Sam for Soccer is making an argument for it. Stone Cutting Sword on Chile and hi-rez means that he's absolutely chunking anyone he comes in contact with. Starts to move forward, gets knocked up by Netroid. Now 3 versus 4. Camelot Kings putting up a defense.
And Mike has the Magai's cloak at this point. That means that first CC, hard CC, won't even hit him. That will just take the proc off from the cloak. Jade Dragon just decided to group up, and let Sam just find anything he can and then push off that. Panda Cat threatening the tier 2 tower over in duo. Variety there for the defense, but looks like he'll be unsuccessful. That's another global 1,500 gold into the pockets of the Chaos Side squad. And Fire Giant's up. I wonder if they want to regroup and go there here, Myth. Is that the call before they look for any more pushing?
I see no reason not to. Not with the damage output that the Dragons have. Not with the gold lead that they have as well. I don't think the Camelot Kings really have the best opportunity to put up a defense here, but they do have certain tools to use that might be able to help them out with the steal. If Captain Twig's able to blink in and disrupt, maybe stop the confirmation from Hurrywin, that's their best shot at stopping this Fire Giant. If it comes down to an actual 5-on-5 engagement, I gotta give the edge to the Dragons.
Yeah, maybe even more than the edge. The entire cliff might be favoring them. Yeah, I'm with you there, Biff. At this point in, it looks like the call from the Kings is a split push. They've got 3 members over in left. As Fire Giant started up, it is only Genetics and Variety here in right to contest the actual fire. Cudgel too early, and the Dragons get the fire without much worry. And look at that. I think they'd have taken Variety just now if he'd stuck around a moment or two longer. But this is value for the Kings. That split push in left gets the Tier 1 and Tier 2. That's about 2k gold globally for the team to respond to fire.
And maybe even more importantly, exposes one of the birds, creates a win condition for the Kings if they are able to take one of these team fights cleanly. The Dragons only have 2 towers left. Their Titan is not benefiting from too much additional defense, so that is nice for them. But it's going to be easier said than done. They're still dealing with the Jade Dragons. 8,000 gold in the lead, Fire Giant on 5 members, and literally every single relic available to them as well. This is going to be a completely even fight under one of these objectives. Unfortunately for the Camelot Kings, I do not think it's going to come down to a T2 defense, likely going to be around one of these birds.
Yeah, and this belt of frenzy down here for Mike is something he loves to do to give that team a big push right when they get into the fight. They also have the Thorns up top for Fine OK in response to a lot of this crit on the other side. Not as strong as it once was, but they've got a couple more team fight relics than the Kings. As Variety finds Hurrywin alone in the jungle, who does use beads in response. Variety wants to keep up the chase. That's I'm a Monster forced out too. Variety keeps putting in work for the Kings. No way around that.
He does, keeping up that pressure, forcing Hurrywin back to base as well.
And Sam.
The push, but Sam for Soccer makes the rotation over. Variety no ult. He might lose his life here.
Does juke out the jump, has to use beads to get away from the ultimate from Sam, but that is Seething Howl popped. So he's ready to keep the aggression brutalized just in time to keep up with the bird form. That is the fight done. If he hadn't quite had that, then I think Variety might have had a chance, but big kill there from Sam. But Hurrywin that much more vulnerable, no beads, no ult.
2 minutes left on this Fire Giant push, and Variety dead for 45 seconds. Fine OK, taking it into his own hands, says, all right, look, I'll clear out this tower, you guys get the other one. I think that's a phenomenal trade for the Dragons here, but having no beads for 100 seconds on Hurrywin can be a good tool. Captain Twig going to have to step up and make use of that timer. If he's able to get his way into the backline, maybe being able to shut down Hurry's one way in for the Kings.
It's a 4-1 split for now. Fine OK lurking in mid, but looks like he'll rejoin the squad in duo to threaten this Phoenix. The Camelot Kings now only have 4, so Mike blinks in, pushes Twig away, and continues to keep him out of the fight. No spot for him to look for an engage with that Fear No Evil. He's still in combat and can't even blink, so Sam moves in. But Sam now low. Good response from Netrioid and from Tings to answer him as Hurrywin takes care of Twig. But the right side Phoenix removed. Genetics stuck in the fight and will certainly fall. And that means it's a 2-for-1 in favor of the Dragons plus Phoenix.
PBM playing that so smart. He knows exactly what Captain Twig wants. You want to get to Hurrywin to the back, you're going to have to get through me, and Captain Twig had no luck with it. Mid-Phoenix now under siege.
That's going to be the call now for the Dragons to take care of this middle Phoenix. It's Variety, Tings, and Netrioid with no set of beans between the 3 of them to try and deal with the Dragons. They do have a blink and a set of Aegis to work with between them. We'll see if it works as the Phoenix already down to half. Variety steps up to frontline. Somersault Cloud is the call, and he comes dunking in, but Mike perfectly times the driving strike, but they don't have the follow-up. And it looks like the Dragons are going to give this up. Only about 20 seconds left on FG. They got the right side Phoenix and are ready to back up after that.
Hey, not the worst consolation prize on the planet either. Primal Fury going to go down for free to the Jade Dragons, making it easier for them to get this Fire Giant and the Pyromancer after they reset. Right side Phoenix is one of the easiest ones to defend if the Camelot Kings do decide to put up some sort of defense around the Fire Giant, but again, I don't think they could take a fight in neutral territory. They're barely able to hang on with their unofficial 6-man inside of the Phoenix. I think the Kings, if anything, have to wait it out again, wait for another siege attempt from the Dragons, and hopefully Twig doesn't get bullied out by PBM again, so we can at least get some value from that ultimate.
We can only hope. We're still not really seeing a tremendously impactful Fear No Evil, and I don't think that's because Twig's just like throwing them away willy-nilly. It's just been that the Dragons have given few opportunities, and things like what we saw from Mike on that Phoenix Siege, where he truly never let Twig get involved in that team fight. So someone else on the Kings is going to have to step up and create some space for him. Variety has tried time and time again, but they can't really pass that baton or connect. In the actual team fights, they're getting a little bit too separated, as now the Dragons are ready for this Fire Giant right as it spawns. It will not be enhanced, but it should be uncontested. The Variety is on his way. He might need to turn around sooner rather than later.
Yeah, don't want to get caught out here. PBM on the chase. Had he connected that pull, could have very easily at least forced out the Somersault Cloud. But look at Sam in mid,
Sam.
caught out.
Yeah, that's Fear No Evil, though. If Sam can live, that's a huge trade. It is his ult for Twigs, but that's got to be their best team fighting ability on the King's side is the Fear No Evil, and they no longer have it. Variety wanted to come in for a steal attempt, but can't make that work either. Fine OK shows up and keeps him at bay. Meanwhile, the rest of the Kings are pushing up left, but Sam backs. He should defend and prevent them from being a left side push. In fact, the entire team gonna back except for Fine, so no shot of anything happening there.
Yeah, the Jade Dragons just want to reset, start pushing up that left side because that is the most valuable Phoenix on the map. Might as well get rid of these pushed out waves from the Kings. I like this strategy from the Jade Dragons. And this feels a lot slower than we saw from Ghost Gaming last year around. It seems a little bit more methodical, perhaps learning a lesson from what PK was able to do in World's Finals. They're taking their time and making sure they're crossing all their T's and dotting their I's. No mistakes from the Chaos side team.
Nope, playing this one clinically so far. We got time for a little bit of an item roundup. There's a Spectral Armor on Fine and Mike to deal with this crit from Netroid. There's also a Spectral on Genetics, so he can in turn deal with Panda Cat. They've got some options coming into this one to set them up. Still no Belt of Frenzy for Mike. We're about a minute away from that, but beads blink all up as they move into the left side. Phoenix Genetics pulled. Wall up, though. That prevents the damage onto the actual Phoenix for now. Meanwhile, Fine OK threatens the middle Phoenix. A 4-1 split, looking to turn to 3-2 as Sam joined Fine OK in mid, and they spread out the Kings.
If Genetics is playing any god besides Ymir, the Jade Dragons take away that Phoenix immediately because of the slow rotation from the Kings. But that wall was just enough to slow them down. Sanford Soccer trying to catch out Variety. That's not a fight you're winning, bud. Variety swings.
Yeah, Variety maybe catching out Sam for Soccer, who leaps up, can't find it. And now we're seeing shades of the early game. But all that middle stuff in between, I really liked there, Sam. Keep that stuff going as he finally gets caught out on that right side. He's having a bit more trouble, Miff, functioning as an independent agent. I think he's got to wait for these fights.
I think he does. He's trying to utilize the serrated edge as well as the Bumba's hammer to sustain himself up through these fights. The Seething Howl gives him additional lifesteal as well, but he wasn't quite able to match what Soul Eater was able to do for Variety. Doesn't even burn through the Somersault Cloud. Sam for Soccer, a little bit impatient in that fight. Has to wait for the rest of his team, and now the Camelot Kings are in a position to push their lead, move forward while Sam for Soccer is dead. Power play for the next 20 seconds. Where do they go? No one on the Jade Dragons is going to give you a free pick.
Looks like maybe a push in left, or Myth maybe, as you called, looking for a pick. If they do want something in left, I imagine they at least want some minions to be there, and that wave is all the way pushed up thanks to the efforts of the Dragons, who pushed all the way down left when they moved up. The Dragons are moving up a little bit now on their own, looking to see if they can catch Netroid just like this, very narrowly miss him, and a good wall from Genetics.
Twig just makes it back to base as well. The Jade Dragons kind of hit that Uno reverse card, saying you're trying to spring a trap. Maybe we're able to catch you out on the rewind, and unfortunately for the Dragons, not quite close enough to be able to pick up that kill. But what does this do to the state of the game? It essentially returns it to neutral. Only 50 seconds left on the Fire Giant buff for 4 members of the Dragons, and they're moving forward again, undeterred. Right side Phoenix is forever weakened. Looks like they want it now.
Yeah, at the very least, I think it would make sense for them to take this one back down if they're going to fall off, or back off once Fire Giant falls off. So Twig lurking near the door, Variety coming from mid, and Sam is there to see him even having a ward? Good work yet again from Doug. Crush nearly connects with Twig, but he makes his way out of there. We're right back to the right side. Phoenix push. Sam still lurking in the jungle and waiting on minions to show up are the Chaos side team. As the Camelot Kings are there for the defense, but the Dragons seem done with this one yet again. And the Kings have done great work. I want to give them credit for defending the base here up against the Dragons and punishing Sam when he tries to act as a solo agent. And Variety's probably not the target he ideally wants in that point. He still likely beats Netroid and Tings. Or Tings.
Yeah, the gold deficit though, Finch, is starting to mean less and less. I'm getting flashbacks to Worlds Finals. The Camelot Kings have essentially forced this game through raw sheer amount of time back into a neutral state. Now, what's the only separating factor between these two teams? It's towers and whether or not they're able to get into that true 6-item slot. No one on the side of Jade Dragons, if my eyes aren't failing me, has sold the boots just yet. Instead, it's just a couple of 400 pods leveling up the relics. Camelot Kings, however, have now fully approached 6 items in their build as well. It's a completely even game state. I think the Camelot Kings, for the first time this match, are in a position where they can put up a defense around the Fire Giant.
And Miff, you're right, they earned the ability to make it to this point in the game where they've got a much better shot of standing toe-to-toe with the Dragons. This Fire Giant fight, if it is a 5-on-5, will tell us everything. And the Kings are here first. There's only 2 members of the Dragons local, but I suppose only 2 members of the Kings as well. The rest of the squad are backing and trying to reset and get in position for what's a critical game-defining fight here on the Fire Giant. How do you want these teams to set up and kind of talk about some of the roles of Fine OK, Sam, Variety, and Twig in this one?
If the Camelot Kings are going to put up a defense here, I think the Jade Dragons are allowed to play it a lot more slowly. They can look for their first counter engage of the game. Camelot Kings are playing almost entirely around Captain Twig at this point. Fear No Evil is their most important cooldown. Full stop. If it isn't a valuable Fear No Evil, we need to see Camelot Kings immediately disengage.
Variety looks like got Panda Cat very, very low, but it costs him the Somersault Cloud and his Blink, and Panda Cat gives up nothing. We have seen that from him all game. He is so patient on his relic usage, and if he thinks you're alone, you are not going to earn his relics from him. He will just stand and fight.
And speaking of Panda Cat, take a peek at his build. Eventually makes his way back to base, sells out the boots, and even with the crit build, elects to pick up the kin size. All of a sudden, Genetics, who could have felt pretty good about dealing with Panda Cat, can no longer. Variety down to 20% HP. Sanford Soccer looking for the salty run back on that 1v1, gets the better end of it this time.
Oh! The read from Mike, though, push into the pull. Variety falls to Sam. And once again, the Jade Dragons seem to just understand how to team fight just a little bit better. Twig does jump away. Still has Fear No Evil. There it is. Used to try and split up the fight. But in come the Dragons right on through. And Sam finds himself a double. Mike gets another pull. And that gets the beads out from Genetics. And now, though Sam is low, maybe a 4-on-3 here without him in the fight. Shard Device and Taiko Drums used. And that will deter the Dragons for now.
Hurry when forced to back up a little bit there off of those Taiko drones. Big Man Ting's doing a good job keeping the Jade Dragons out of their base. Genetics has to play safe here. If he steps too far forward, the same goes for Netroid. It doesn't matter how healthy you are, you cannot take on 4 members of the Jade Dragons right now. Netroid still, though, undeterred, working his way into the Fire Giant pit. Do the Camelot Kings think they can go for the pull here? We'll see.
They are pulling it. There's 3 members of them here. But it looks like they weren't going to do it if the Dragons were present. I like this. You know, maybe take it if the Dragons are sleeping a bit and back too much or all at once, but with them there and deterring, looks like they're going to back off and maybe even play a little bit of defense. They're not backing just yet. They're still present.
Still 5 seconds left on Captain Twig's respawn. Jade Dragons pull up the enhanced Fire Giant. 35 minutes in, 4-man defense from the Camelot Kings. Twig back in the land of the living as well. This is going to be, again, a reset to neutral. Jade Dragons are going to have to re-earn their victory state. They have to put themselves further ahead. Variety, the target yet again, can't be getting picked like that, bud.
He came in without the beads and went a little too far forward. Still a full minute away from having those back. That's the same for Twig, for Genetics, for Fine OK, and Sam. They all don't have beads. Genetics pulled into the Fire Giant pit. The Dragons have it low, but they'll take the life of Genetics first, who eventually falls. But the Camelot Kings get the FG. It must have been the Fear No Evil, but doesn't matter. The Dragons continue to take the actual kills. Only Tings and Netroid still standing. And for how much longer as Fine OK finds the slow, continues the aggression. Ting shows up, defends his boy, the backline peeling for each other, but Mike is here now. Cannot find the pull, but the Dragons have a 5v2 push.
and they're working their way through the center of the map. Hurry Wind is low, as is Fine OK. They're going to have to play it very smart here. Tinks is able to close gap, should be able to kill him, but he's just as vulnerable himself. Trades out his beads and has to limp his way back to Fountain.
Sam did good work there to deter teams from getting any closer, but Variety's only about, 5 seconds away from rejoining this fight. That means the Dragons with low health bars have to consider if they really want to keep pushing, man. Not having fire is such a big difference there. They'd have had sustain building up for them that whole time, but the Kings managed to strip it away from them.
Every single one of these team fights starts off with Sam for Soccer hitting Variety or Variety hitting Sam for Soccer. Whoever wins the 1v1 wins the team fight as well. The last couple of times it's been the Jade Dragons benefiting from the phenomenal Fenrir play here. Sam for Soccer 12, 6, and 8 for his team. Fire Giant still on 2 members of the side of the Camelot Kings. What are the Jade Dragons going to do here? Are they going to try and work their way forward, keep the push up, maybe try and force a fight in neutral territory around this Gold Fury? Camelot Kings, I know I've been saying it over and over, 36 minutes in, I'd still consider this a completely dead even match.
Some boots are getting sold, though, as you said. Looks like still there for Sam for Soccer in the jungle, but that's about it on the Jade Dragon side. But they're starting to get sold off over for the Kings as well. Variety truly hitting that 6 slot. Elixir of Speed being bought for Netroid, I believe, as well, is there, as the Jade Dragons do set up around this Fury in the late game. Looks like the Kings don't have that information. It'll be taken by the Dragons without much contest, and instead they'll have a push-up in right by Variety and everyone else grouping up in mid. I like this, though. Whatever the Camelot Kings are doing it, they're doing it as a group. They're not setting it up for Sam for Soccer to find any more free picks.
I'm getting nervous, Finch. Flash is back to the PK finals. This game has been going longer and longer. The Jade Dragons fans probably getting a little bit nervous as well. A little bit of a split push from the Camelot Kings, strips away the tier 2 mid tower. No base race, says the Jade Dragons, who all immediately back in numbers. All 5 going to defend their own base, maybe looking if they can catch out someone from the Kings. Shouldn't be able to, as long as all the order side walks back towards their base. Variety already made his way back, able to push up that left-hand wave. It's an artificial 5 versus 4 Jade Dragons, if only they can catch someone out.
Well, it looks like they cannot quite do it. Still, though, an engage coming through from Mike, looking for Twig, though Tings is waiting right around the corner. So they do kind of catch up there towards the end, but nothing life-threatening, nothing critical. Instead, we're still a good ways away from Fire Giant. A good ways away from that spawn. You can still see the timer there, 1:49. Before it'll actually start coming back up. So the Dragons fall back for now, but the Camelot Kings are still pushing up. Neither one of these teams really willing to give too much up. The Kings are coming all the way on in, haven't actually started fighting just yet, but they are waiting in the jungle for them. Netroid takes a back right in the middle of all this, so there's only 4 members of the Camelot Kings still pushed all the way up, but no one wants to give up on this neutral territory just yet here, Myth. And the Jade Dragons might even be able to find a punish if Variety and Genetics aren't careful. There's the leap
Good
in from
Lord.
Sam. Variety forced into the somersault cloud and already brought down to half HP.
Man, Variety is so squishy with this build. Every single time Sam for Soccer locks eyes with him, he wants to take that fight. Jade Dragons feeling confident because they spot Netroid in the center of the map, trying to deal with these fire minion waves. Maybe they would be able to pick someone out, at least taking away that ultimate from Variety. Should get them a little bit of value here as the Jade Dragons try and move into Camelot King's side of the jungle, strip away whatever they can. This time, they get the red buff. And if my eyes aren't deceiving me, I think Sikkim just hit for 1,040 on that red buff. Yeah, if Hurry was able to close gap onto any priority targets, you better believe they're dead.
He's got the pendulum of ages there for him, so that is quite a bit of damage on all of those initial hits especially, but as aggro is broken down for you nowadays with these types of builds, still can give quite a bit of damage for a long while. But these teams have not yet grouped up on the fire. This next fight here at the 40-minute mark, I've got to imagine, going to be critical. Last time, the Camelot Kings lost the fight but took the objective, and that really halted the Dragons in their tracks, even with about a 4-on-2 into that mid-Phoenix. They were too low, too beat up to continue making that push without some kind of sustain. One of these teams is going to need to win it a little bit more cleanly to really be able to end this game, and it could be either team. Phoenix is exposed for both teams, which means the game could end off one handily one fight.
It sure can. Camelot Kings trying their best to establish the defensive positioning around the Fire Giant, setting up whatever wards that they can. But Jade Dragons, don't they look just a little bit more confident? Immediately walk in, strip away the ward, walk out, force the Kings to respond.
The Kings are still stepping up a bit themselves, responding indeed. Sam looking for variety as the two have dueled all game, all set up until now, and have largely been the indicator of which direction the fight's going to go on the backside. So still no team really willing to start it. Jade Dragons move in and control the neutral territory, and the Kings forced to back up. But even some of the Dragons, especially Sam, kind of moving over towards that middle lane, not outright over in the Fire Giant pit, controlling as much of the map as they can.
40 minutes in the game, Genetics ticks over to level 20. Now everyone in the lobby
is
at
that
full
dash?
power here. Camelot Kings just gonna start up the enhanced Fire Giant in the face of the Dragons. Hurrywin was in base.
Yeah, and Variety backed up. They must have had the information. They had the numbers advantage, and so they pulled the trigger on the actual fire. They've got the best confirmed. Tycho Drums does it. Camelot Kings get the enhanced Fire Giant in the late game, but Fine OK is on the warpath, deterred by the crit from Netroid, but Variety falls to Panda Cat in the back. Now the blinks mean the front line of the Dragons can move in.
Huge.
The target is Netroid in the back, who gets Sam before he dies, at least finds a trade, so that makes it 2 for 1, plus Fire Giant in favor of the Kings.
Netroid has no right finding that kill. From 10% takes Sam for Soccer all the way down, potentially even maintains his own base. Jade Dragons can no longer move forward here. Netroid making a hero play. Fire Giant on 3 members of the Camelot Kings, seeing if maybe they can catch someone
pushing?
out. This is the best push. This is the best push attempt they've had all game, Finch. 3 members of the Enhanced Fire. Yeah, they could do it. They could certainly do it, or at least wait on a couple members to respawn.
Looks like maybe your initial read there correct. Looking for some picks or some people sticking around from the Dragons, and they'll catch Mike, who has the Magi, so there is no pull. It's Tings picked up at the wall from Genetics, shuts the whole thing down. Tings looks for the retreat, but Lord of the Afterlife from Fine OK gets him in, and he is sticking on top of Tings, but Fear No Evil from Tings, or from Twig rather, buys his team some time. But boy, was the engage from the Dragons there. I don't know what the Kings were really looking for.
Man, the disengage from the Kings were clean, though. Twig, if he's not there with the ultimate, that was the end of the game. Jade Dragons did a very good job, even in the face of adversity, losing out on the second Fire Giant in a row, still looking for proactive plays, seeing if somewhere on the map, if the Camelot Kings are slacking, trying to run away with this match. But now, the ball is in the King's court. All members alive. Fire Giant enhanced on 3 members. 1 tier 2 tower left standing on the side of the Dragons. No longer can the Camelot Kings react and rest on their laurels. They have to make an aggressive play. And where are they going to go? Immediately to the left side. They want the most valuable Phoenix.
This is us taking a look back at this engage from Genetics. The Magi is allowed for the pull, but this wall prevents disaster. I mean, that is walls shown right before what could have been a disaster. Keeps this game in the reach of the Kings, and more than in the reach. With Fire on 3, they're going to look for the push. How do you want them to play it?
You have to have Sam for Soccer be the first one in on the side of Jade Dragons. He's the one who's been able to burn beads consistently. You want him able to potentially even isolate Twig, whereas Twig, on the other hand, again, and he still has been for the last 20 or so minutes, the most important cooldown on the map. That Fear No Evil, if they're not able to secure a fight off of it, should be able to disengage themselves and try again later. But if they don't find that Fear No Evil in the initial, it's time to disengage. Keep your eyes on him, see where he goes.
An aggressive ward down for the Dragons. They've got good vision, and Sam knows the Variety's movement is down. That is why he leaps in for the stun, and Variety already in trouble. Still hasn't used the beads. They finally come out at the tail end, and Somersault Cloud is used as well. Variety now a lot less safe, and Sam wants to keep up the chase, jumping in again with the Unchained. Couldn't quite commit, though, with Camelot Kings lurking in the jungle, and I think that is it for the push. 50 seconds left on the buff, and the Kings give up on the assault.
It might have to be someone else on the split push. Variety, it's been pretty few and far between, but he's able to get the better end of the 1v1 up against Sam for Soccer. He can't be the one looking for the split push because Sam's just going to win out in that fight every single time. Strips away Variety's beads, takes away the Somersault Cloud as well. Maybe even you're forced to send Twig over there to potentially take that 1v1, or at least try to distract Sam ever so slightly and then rotate over and rejoin his team. But both teams playing very hesitant 45 minutes into the game. Fire Giant buff wearing off in 10 seconds. Here we go again, Finch. Yet again, a neutral dance for the enhanced fire giant.
Yeah, and last time what kind of broke that neutrality was Herwin taking a back, and the Kings having that information, being able to step forward and start to fight in that 5v4, and that kind of gave them that advantage with 3 members having fire. Once they all respawned, they tried to push left, but the Dragons were there for the defense. So this time, got to imagine the Dragons are going to be a bit more conscious, present about when they take those backs, what information they're giving over to the Kings, trying to back on sentries, I'd imagine, and making sure that information can't be given away just to the good old eyesight. Pyromancer will go to the Dragons. Doesn't amount to a whole lot now that we're this deep into the game, but the Kings not even there. Instead, they're having presence on the left side of the map. Could they be looking for a surprise group up in Phoenix Burn? I think they'll be able to get away with it because the Dragons won't be able to back in time. As long as it's the tank that's in first, this should catch the Dragons completely off guard and result in a Phoenix. They'll get the information now, but it is too late. Backs being channeled, left side Phoenix being burned, and the Kings find the play in the late game, and the Dragons don't have a response. Too late for the backs now. Might as well just stay. But I suppose they at least want to show some presence so the Kings can't just walk in and end.
Yeah, they have to take that back there. If no one goes back, the Kings do take your Titan. Phenomenal macro play from the Camelot
Yeah, great
Kings.
call.
Yeah, give them a shot caller medal, but it does lose them out on the enhanced fire giant. But they realize
Wait, they're sticking around
not everyone's
for
back
an end
yet. They
attempt.
want to go for the ends.
That's exactly what this is. The Kings have a plan, but Sam for Sucker's here, and the rest of the Dragons have back, so you will not be taking it away from us like thieves in the night. Herwin gets Twig, Panda Cat gets Genetics, Netrioid drops, and that is it. The Jade Dragons find a day aside, 70 seconds on the timers, and this game is over.
Look, Finch, had the Kings been even 3 seconds faster, I think they get away with it. They were only on the Titan uncontested for 1 second, and they drop it to 50%. You gotta give props to the Kings. You have to have a ton of gumption to be willing to make that call. But again, gotta give credit to the winners, Jade Dragons, showing that veteranship, take away the enhanced fire giant, and make their way back to base. But they gotta be sweating, man. The Camelot Kings show they are absolutely competitors.
Yeah, and I think that was Sam with the read. He kind of stuck around after everyone else committed a bit more to the fire just to make sure the Kings were not up to any shenanigans, and that kind of initially set it up. They had a ward down there too, just to make sure they were able to get those resets, get back in, and defend. But boy, this Kings team seems for real to me. I know that's hard to say after an 0-2 loss, but Myth, they gave the Dragons a run for everything they're worth.
If you could take the Dragons to 48 minutes, I think you've earned every single accolade that I'm capable of giving, all right? I mean,
yeah.
The Kings are a brand new team. I'm going to keep emphasizing that because of how true it is. They have not played together really at all, and now coming in to Season 8 up against what is hailed as the best team in the league and pushing them to that extent, absolutely stunning.
And we still have to talk about playing through the difficulty of the ping as well. I think we have to give this team all kinds of credit. I mean, Genetics had one of the best walls I'd ever seen, saving Tings' life, kind of keeping him on that side, not getting pulled in by Mike. So a great performance on both sides there, but it is the Jade Dragons who are your winners. Congrats to them. We'll have a quick break, then we'll be right back to break it down.
sure didn't feel like a 10-31 kills game there. That sounds lopsided. And I guess to be fair, it was lopsided until the Kings put up fantastic base defenses time and time again, kept that game alive. And that, I think, before we move on to the Dragons and what they did well, you have to give the Kings props for a team that looked as dominant as the Jade Dragons did in day one and now in game one. And then early on here in game two, effectively 98% of the time that we've seen this Jade Dragon team play, they look near unstoppable. So the fact that the Kings were able to put up a great fight here in game two, definitely something to be excited about for them here for the future. Aggro, we're obviously going back and forth on the call to try to end the game, to not try to end the game there towards the end for the Kings. What's your read on that situation?
Okay, so the call to go for left Phoenix is genius. And I love the idea to stick around and try and end the game if you don't think they all backed. But there's a huge problem with it, and that's that, number one, you don't have ward vision on fire. And then you have to commit. If you are going for it, you have to commit as soon as that fire is spawning, because you know the DPS is going to be nuts with the full build, full crit on her, and the Scylla there to deal the DPS. So if they had gone right as EFG spawned, we're talking about a game 3 and Camelot Kings winning. And even then, it feels really bad to have to give up EFG. We took a risk, it didn't pay off, we thought we might be able to end, didn't work. All right, they got it. I'm so confused by the call on, well, if we're here, even though we heard EFG go down, we know they're going to be able to back, we know we can't kill it in time, let's just go for it anyways. It's the true in for a penny, in for a pound mentality there for the Camelot Kings. I mean, I cannot overstate how smart that left Phoenix call was. It was genius. But then you just don't have to hard commit that hard. It doesn't have to be like that. Disappointing, because that was a great comeback from the Camelot Kings. They showed a lot of resiliency. They made a lot of really, really good plays. To be fair, the Jade Dragons had to make a lot of mistakes to get to that point, but you can only play with what the opponent does for you. They commit well, they play perfectly around it until they make a really, really confusing call. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. They just didn't have to go for the Titan. You can take the Phoenix and get out.
Fair enough. Maybe the Kings are feeling tired of defending their own base for the last 30 minutes of that game, whatever it may have been. The call was there, and the call did not ultimately work out for the Kings, but it did show that somebody's there. Somebody's making the calls, and the team is following up on it wholeheartedly. The post-game stats don't necessarily tell the entire story here. They do, I think, for the large part of the early game. If you want to read into these stats back by the end of the game, the damage number started to level off some as the Kings caught up in gold, and the experience didn't matter by the end of it. Sanford Soccer, though, ended up playing the Fenrir here, Aggro. In PBM back on the Hercules, this team continues to be a nightmare, I think, to pick and ban against. If Giannis is going to be immediate ban number one every single time, it's going to be more and more and more difficult, I think, to ban against this team as seemingly everything works out.
Well, it's just like Auburn put out on the SMITE Pro Twitter, at SMITE Pro on Twitter, by the way. Giannis banned, Herwind. Oh no! Anyways, Scylla, by the way. Like, he killed it on both picks. At some point, you probably go, we just have to accept that he's going to be in a really good position. Maybe it's the plan needs to be pick Giannis, or ban Giannis, pick Scylla, or vice versa. I don't know. There's a lot of problems you're going to have to do when the Jade Dragons are your opponent, because they have a lot going for them. They're very difficult to pick and ban against. And as long as they're executing on their game plan, they look really unbeatable. But clearly, that isn't quite always happening yet. I mean, that game should have been over a long time ago. And I'm sure that the Dragons know that they've got a lot to clean up after that game, too.
Yeah, surprising this team has stuff to clean up. 2-0 on top of the standings, Jade Dragons. Camelot Kings fall down to 1-1, still very respectable given their opponents to start off the phase and start off the year here in the SPL. One final game remains before we close out the first week in Season 8 of the SPL. Aggro the Solar Scarabs up against the Valhalla Valkyries. I don't know if anyone knows exactly how to feel about this Valkyries team. I know you and Gore are casting that one. Give me some initial thoughts before we hear from one of the winners of this matchup.
I can't wait, man. I'm super excited. I mean, obviously the Valkyries in a suboptimal position, all having to play from Europe on that higher ping, and the Scarabs looking to bounce back after a subpar performance, I would say, yesterday up against the Olympus Bolts. Definitely showed some flashes. Zapman clearly the leader of that team. I think that he's going to be excited to go up against Raffer and Emilito, and I'm super excited to cast it.
A day for growth for the Scarabs and a debut day for the Valhalla Valkyries in our next matchup. Before that, John Finch standing by with PBM.
Thanks, Dave. I am indeed here with the support for the Dragons. And Mike, first off, man, how's it feel to start off the year 2-0, man? I hear through the grapevine you've had some trouble with these first games. What's it mean to get the win here?
Yeah, scrims were going pretty horribly, so having a good start to the weekend definitely feels nice. I'm going to be honest, man, my eyes hurt. That game went too long. Like, that's why I just want to get in, get out. Like, this, it's rough, man. It's rough.
Well, I know it's rough, but I got to dive in there a little more. What do you think kind of hung you guys up there a little bit kind of in that game? Obviously, the Kings
Sam trolled, man. Sam trolled.
He did get picked a couple times.
I can't win if Sam... Okay, Sam... He's carrying. Everyone knows Sam's carrying, right? Like, we all need to give Sam credit. Sam's awesome. We love him. But he gets this huge lead, and then he just whiffs it out the window, and I don't want to be here anymore. That's where I'm at on it, quite frankly.
Well, maybe I ask you a question that's going to be right in your Q zone here then. Talk to me a little bit about Hurwin's impact and what he's been doing for you guys, because he's been lights out on the Giannis and the Scylla. You've been getting great work out of him.
Yeah, Tyler's been playing just great. I think especially it's really nice. Obviously we felt like Ben was great for our team last year and brought a lot to us, but one of the things that we felt like Tyler was going to bring that was a little different was a little bit more direction and communication out of the mid lane. I think especially on match day that's kind of shown, where I feel like compared to our scrims at least, we're all just a lot more engaged in comms, and I think Tyler does a great job kind of articulating like where he feels strong and what he wants to do, and I think that's been a really big benefit for us just 2 matches in, but I'm looking forward to like working more and more with that.
You guys are looking good so far, and glad to hear her has been a big help. One more thing, man. Talk to me about you guys' flexibility and picks and bans, because when you guys have the Herc, the Osiris, and all these picks on there, it feels like they can go just about anywhere. The Fenrir, mix it into all that. You guys are almost impossible team to predict.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. We lost like literally every single scrim this week. So after scrims, we just like talked and we just had a bunch of ideas that we haven't gotten to practice with yet. So when we were drafting, Kabam was just like, okay, so what are we implementing from these talks into the weekend, or are we just winging it? And we're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. So we kind of just let everybody do their own individual thing and just like try stuff out a little bit. And, some of it went pretty well and some of it was,
Well, glad to see that it's working out, even if maybe you guys have to kind of try stuff on the day. Always great to get some insight from you, Mike. Thanks for talking. Good luck in your next matches. And we're going to take a quick break, then be right back with that very next set.